Our story kicks off in a totally wrecked world, with destroyed buildings and desolation everywhere you look. In this scene, a young man in armor appears with a calm expression and a slight smile on his face. Walking down the street, he runs into some shadowy monsters, and our hero finds it incredibly annoying. With steady steps, the fighter keeps moving forward, unfazed by the creatures surrounding him. Then he asks himself why the creature had to run so far away, just to bother him. Soon, the protagonist gets closer to the monsters and a body on the ground, realizing he's found his target. The fallen man was already disfigured, and the young man noticed that the target had basically served himself up to the creature that was chasing him. Our hero stops between two large shadowy beasts and comments on the whole scene. The creatures watch him intensely, and a system message pops up, saying they are just monsters with various numbers for names. The young warrior then shows a look of disgust, wondering about the sheer lack of creativity in their names. Suddenly, one of the monsters lunges forward furiously, opening its mouth to show off sharp teeth in an imminent attack. But the protagonist stands his ground as three larger beasts surround him with a red aura of energy. With that, the creatures attack with full force, and the young hero braces for the confrontation without a second thought. At that moment, the fighter brandishes his weapon, and a message appears indicating the activation of the addition skill. His eyes glow an intense violet, and another message reveals that his multiplication skill has been activated. The protagonist, with glowing violet eyes, attacks the dark beings, delivering swift strikes all around him. Just then, a huge structure rises into the sky, and an intense light shines from the top of it. A gloved hand bangs on a metal surface, and an irritated voice demands they open the gate. A new character, Jim Jongjun, greets him happily and asks if his buddy is back. He complains that the situation is a real pain, and his friend then asks about the fugitive. The protagonist replies that the target is already gone, his body devoured by monsters, leaving his friend in shock. The wanderer adds that 3A rank creatures were happily munching on his body. At this, young Jongjun's eyes go wide as he realizes the immense danger of having monsters of that level around. Jim explains that even strong players would have a tough time and wonders how the hero dealt with them. The young man with violet eyes simply replies that he took care of all of them, leaving his friend completely blown away. He declares he's hungry and suggests they head to the cafeteria, but Jongjun stops him, wanting to know something. His colleague then asks if the protagonist might be an easy mode player, revealing his name Kang Taezin. The young warrior gets ticked off and says that plenty of people left the labyrinth with him, and he could just ask them. Jongjun explains that the other easy mode players have already kicked the bucket, and that the new ones don't last long. His friend concludes that it's weird for the protagonist to survive there, finding him strange since even the normal mode players struggle. Jim is impressed by his colleague's strength and asks how the wanderer manages to be so powerful. The violet-eyed warrior just watches in silence. As they walk, Jongjun comments that his friend always blames the group for his rushed clearances. Then they head towards a cafeteria. Inside, the traveler gets annoyed seeing potatoes again and asks if there's any other food. The other guy explains that potatoes are the most cost-effective food, and even with simple cultivation, there's a limit. Jongjun then asks if his companion didn't learn simple cultivation, and the warrior replies that he doesn't need to. Suddenly, an angry shout echoes through the place, with someone exclaiming that this can't possibly be real. The protagonist and his friend watch the commotion, and Jim comments that it looks like another player has arrived. His friend says that this time, the newcomer will be contained, and Taezin notices he seems to be from hard mode. Soon, someone shouts the warrior's name, asking for urgent help because the situation is chaotic. The newbie continues to freak out, shouting that this can't be earthen and that everything should have been over. He insists it must be a prank or a hidden camera show and tells them not to mess with him. At that moment, the protagonist emerges from behind a curtain while another person asks about a certain Lee Taeyeon. An older man tries to calm the agitated guy down, revealing that the world has changed drastically while he was away. The newly arrived player, still angry, shouts for them to stop messing with him. Jongjun laughs excitedly while the warrior says the newbie is acting strange. The fighter then tells his friend to have fun and warns him not to touch his potatoes. Young Jongjun shows up with his potatoes but soon gets a worried look on his face. The older man reveals that this place is in fact Earth and humanity is nearly extinct. The newbie keeps shouting angrily, and the other protagonist asks if that's his favorite catchphrase. The newcomer still refuses to believe this is Earth and screams that the man is lying. He says that so many players couldn't be stopped by a few monsters, and Taezin sighs, figuring it's the usual story. The image shows that most players who return from the labyrinth go insane. They can't accept the harsh reality of the current situation and just cry nonstop. Taezin then lets out a long sigh and says this happens all the time, it's not easy to accept. With that, he concludes that there's only one way to solve this problem. The fighter says he'll have to make the other guy accept reality the hard way. He then asks for the newbie's name and issues a battle request. The newcomer shouts his name, Lee Changkun, and is surprised by the challenge to a fight. With that, the fighter charges with his glowing sword, his strike incredibly powerful. Lee Changkun then counters with a yellow energy blast, launching himself at his opponent. The impact between the two warriors creates an explosion of vibrant light and energy. Kang Taezin stands firm as his first attack nullification skill activates. Faced with this, the newbie Lee Changkun is shocked to see the dust settle with no effect. Taizhen then remains calm with his sword and asks the newcomer if he's done yet. The other guy is outraged and questions why his attack didn't work, saying he's never heard of that skill. So the hero grips his sword firmly, preparing for his own move. At that moment, Taizhen starts to move with a blue aura and asks his opponent if it's his turn now. The blow hits Lee Changkun, who feels the impact, but his defense activates, reducing the damage. Taizhen's blade strikes the newbie, who reacts in pain, but the damage registered is only 49. The newcomer is surprised and complains about the small loss of health, confident in the power difference. The warrior then looks at his opponent and asks if his health isn't over 10,000 points. Taizhen activates several skills. His attack is doubled and squared, and set to ignore defenses. Lee Changkun yells for Taizhen to wait, while the fighter invites him to take the hit. The warrior Taizhen holds his sword tight with an intense blue aura, ready for a final attack. In that moment, the hero's strike hits the newbie, who is sent flying backward in an explosion. The energy from Taizhen's attack spreads rapidly in all directions, engulfing the area. A screen pops up showing 9,604 damage to the newbie, who screams in pain. The purple-eyed fighter tells the newcomer that they are, indeed, on their own planet. The young man on the ground writhes in pain and tells his opponent to stop, as he can't take any more. Crying, the warrior wonders why the world became like this and regrets having cleared the labyrinth. In a flashback, the world was peaceful, but suddenly the sky cracks open and giant monsters invade. The city is then overrun by terrifying creatures, causing destruction as people hide. Humans were given a final choice as the world was consumed by darkness. The players who entered the labyrinth had to choose the difficulty of their journey. They could only return home after clearing the labyrinth and thus getting rid of the threat. Earth was on the brink of destruction, filled with monsters hovering over ruined cities. Taizhen then stands firm and says they have no other choice but to try and save the world. Just then, a friend of the protagonist approaches with a smile, and the other returns the greeting. The newbie still feels the pain from the blow and is supported while a man praises the hero's strength. Taizhen seems uninterested and asks what's so special about defeating a weakling. While the warrior eats a cold potato, a colleague approaches and asks about his skill. The young partner is shocked by Taizhen's powers and questions how they even exist. His friend then asks about the hero's unique skills, and he replies it was all through hard work. Just then, a loud sound echoes in the sky, making the protagonist and his friend look up. Suddenly, a woman in armor appears on the scene and is met with applause from the crowd. The beautiful woman with purple eyes smiles, and it's revealed that she is Li Taeyeon, returning from a mission. In a grand hall, the protagonist looks at a giant skeleton on the ceiling and gets annoyed by it. The warrior touches a fancy piece of furniture in the room and mutters that this stuff still really bothers him. Meanwhile, he thinks about how monsters are running rampant outside, yet inside, this place maintains its luxury. Looking at a large painting, the hero reflects that only one person could have brought it here intact, the one who cleared solo mode. With this, the protagonist wonders how that woman became the strongest in the world, with no one to rival her. The scene then focuses on Li Taeyeon sitting in an elegant and poised chair, confirming her identity. She then leans in with a smile and says that having a focus or a hobby is vital, asking if he wants one. Next, the leader questions the warrior about the reason for his summons, mentioning the lesson he taught a player. The experienced player finds it strange that an easy mode adventurer beat a hard mode one, no matter how many times she hears it. Her stats are displayed, revealing that the woman has a very high level, along with admirable power and strength. The protagonist then asks the woman if she's just showing off by displaying her own stats on her screen. The heroine replies that she's just checking something and asks the warrior to show his stats as well. Kang Taezin's stats then appear much lower than the woman's, and she comments that he's weak. The young man retorts that he already explained everything and states that his stats are great for an easy mode player. It's explained that the labyrinth has 4 difficulties, and clearing one of them stops a player's growth right there. Even though hard mode adventurers had stats 10 times higher, none of them could take a single hit from the guy. The reason for so much power is the hero's special skills, and the woman asks him to stand still for a moment. The experienced player activates her boost and addition skills to strengthen her attack against the warrior. Activating perfect aim, the heroine launches a direct hit on the protagonist because skills can be earned. Taezin's gaze intensifies as he takes the hit from the skilled player, showing his concentration. The young adventurer is then enveloped in an intense pink aura as he's struck by the powerful woman's blow. Even with the direct hit, Taezen seems unfazed or maybe even annoyed by the situation. The protagonist's total nullification activates, and he takes no damage, asking why she did that. Calmly, the woman just smiles and claims she just felt like attacking, and it was no big deal. At this, the woman is amazed by the young man's skills, like total nullification and time stop. The player realizes her colleague's techniques came from strategic exploration and regrets not doing the same. The young warrior responds that it's all in the past and doesn't make a difference now. But the woman disagrees, saying he's incredible and that maybe they could have won if he had played on solo mode. The protagonist's face turns more serious as he listens intently to what she has to say. It's explained that the adventurer's skills are strong, but most of them are based on his stats. Meanwhile, other players lament the situation, wishing he was from a stronger mode. Thus, it's revealed that the hero couldn't use even half of his skills due to a lack of stats. The experienced player sitting down changes the subject and asks if the young man is back from patrol, and he confirms. The protagonist then lifts his head seriously and warns that the next wave of enemies is about to begin. Meanwhile, the guy's eye glows intensely with a threatening purple hue. Following this, several shadowy figures rapidly approach the young warrior in the hall. Finally, he shows an expression of irritation and states that they are all completely screwed. In the attack waves, monsters emerge in massive numbers, and many lives are lost as their territory shrinks further. The first wave took soul from humanity, leaving behind a trail of destruction and despair. In the second wave, half of the hard mode players lost their lives as the fight was intense and brutal. A small city was the most they could protect in the third wave, and now the fourth is about to begin. The adventurer questions the number of enemies, and the leader reveals 2 S ranks and dozens of A ranks. The young man considers the threat of 2 S ranks, which even the leader has trouble defeating, and they are short on players. The hero asks if an apostle is stronger than an S rank, and the woman insists they have to try. She then asks Tazen to fight the 2 S ranks, a gigantic challenge against powerful forces. The young man asks if she's sending him to his doom, but the commander explains her battle plan. The irritated guy calls the woman a handful and asks if she's going to tell the others about the suicide plan. She says they need to prepare emotionally, but the warrior questions if she wants them to perish without knowing. The woman, with a subtle smile, replies that it might be the happier option for everyone involved. The young warrior turns away with a serious face and states that he doesn't agree with his group's idea. The leader, with glowing purple eyes, carefully observes a whale skeleton hanging from the hall's ceiling. She tells Tazen that he is strong and that if it were him, he could lead them to victory in the coming battle. In the hall, people feel a great sadness as they knew this day would come, but the feeling was terrible. Amidst the despair, one of the adventurers sits on the floor and soon questions the protagonist about his feelings. The hero replies that he has accepted the situation and that they lasted a long time against an impossible scenario for everyone. However, his friend states that living this long was a blessing, but the protagonist disagrees, saying they're all going to bite the dust. The group of warriors is in shock over the plan revealed by the leader, and their expressions are filled with sadness and fear. On second thought, Tazen's companion reflects that the fate of one of their colleagues was really bad and unlucky. The protagonist then agrees with his friend, commenting that their colleague suffered to clear a labyrinth only to get taken out. As the situation worsens, powerful energy surges in the sky with lightning and strong winds. At that moment, Tazen asks his friend how he feels, thinking he would be the most ticked off about everything. The young man vents that he is angry because humanity wouldn't be wiped out if he had done half of what the others did. Suddenly, the city trembles and the ground begins to crack ominously, with purple lightning shooting out. An immense creature emerges from the depths of the earth, bringing with it the aura of a powerful and dangerous being. Several enormous beasts with red eyes and scaly bodies appear in the destroyed landscape. The protagonist's companion looks at him and asks again how many beings he is going to fight. The hero Tazen replies that he will have to face 2 S-rank opponents and then activates a skill. With that, the guy activates his Great Leap technique, launching a purple energy directly into the ground. The protagonist is then propelled into the sky, flying over the city and activating complete surveillance. His eyes focus on a blue monitor that appears before him, and the data is promptly displayed on the screen. The display shows several red dots, indicating enemies and a few blue ones representing allies. Suddenly, the red dots stand out significantly, and the system shows that all have been found. The young warrior lands among hideous creatures, enveloped in an intense and powerful purple glow. His serious gaze with glowing eyes asks if the beings were excited to see him there. As the giants approach, the system initiates a check of the adventurer's mental stability. Several tests are run to confirm the protagonist's state, and all results come back clean. With his unshakable willpower, the hero's body develops an incredible resistance for the fight. Purple energy surrounds the adventurer's feet near the giant enemies on the battlefield. He glares at his opponents furiously, declaring that they will all perish before his great strength. The warrior's face reflects pure determination as the purple aura completely envelops him. In a vast plain, he faces 2 enormous creatures with a destroyed city in the background. The protagonist wields his sword and hopes that none of the enemies are the defensive type in this fight. Just then, a giant defensive type monster appears with an absurd health pool of over 148 million. That enormous creature then covers the ground, revealing an imposing base and terrifying strength. At that, a purple energy explodes from the ground, opening deep cracks and indicating the young man's power. The monster's red eye then twitches, showing its surprise at the opponent's initial attack. The protagonist activates his temporal acceleration and scoffs at the first enemy's immense health, finding it a drag. The fighter then looks at another terrifying creature, a monster that resembles a giant octopus. This is Monster 5, a long-range attack type with a health of just over 1,200,000. Even without knowing which would be better, the hero prepares for combat with the giant octopus. The warrior charges at the creature, delivering swift strikes against its tentacles amidst purple lightning. However, the attacks on the monster's parts cause little damage, with the system advising him to aim for the head. The fighter then looks up and decides his next strike will be directly at the sea creature's head. The beast prepares to attack, firing green energy from its tentacles toward the adventurer. The monster fires a powerful beam, and the hero prepares to counter or dodge the imminent attack. The guy's total nullification of the first attack activates, canceling out the damage that would have been dealt to him. At that moment, the fighter realizes the attack comes from the direction the tentacles are pointing, and it's hard to dodge. The adventurer thinks there's only one option to deal with the imminent attack now that he understands it. The young man realizes that predicting the attack's trajectory is the only possible way out of this challenge. So the protagonist activates his acceleration to try and predict the attack's path more quickly. With this, the tentacled monster takes a hit, and the fighter understands he can't drag this out. But the warrior's blow only caused 48 damage to the octopus-like monster. The monster launches a green attack, but the protagonist's total nullification completely protects him from the damage. With this, the sea creature becomes confused, not understanding why its attack failed at that moment. The adventurer then charges with his sword to attack the tentacled monster again. However, the other defensive creature creates a blue barrier, protecting its ally from the attack. The fighter realizes that the giant being is protecting the other monster, making it an invulnerable target. This guardian defends the long-range attacker when it's in danger, which is why they're together. Suddenly, the hero smiles with a glint in his eye, as he has figured out the two opponents' strategy. The young man then manifests a new yellow energy in his hand, forcibly starting the battle. At this, the defensive monster is surrounded by a strong yellow light that protects it from any kind of damage. The attacking monster, in turn, fires its green beams again toward the young adventurer. The shooter creature launches its greenish rays in the hero's direction and hits him dead on. At that moment, a message warns that only Monster 7 can damage the protagonist for 1 minute. He thinks the battle would be easy if Li Taeyeon were there with her high-end gear and stats. With that, the adventurer activates Addition, doubling his current attack in search of more power. The young man also activates Multiplication, quadrupling the damage dealt, and Absolute Judgment. The protagonist remembers Li Taeyeon's tact against defensive monsters attacking the long-range one first. However, the warrior can't do the same, because a single blow from these enemies would annihilate him quickly. His current strength of 9,604 isn't enough to win this fight alone. So, the fighter decides to reset a skill to reactivate Multiplication and amp up his power. With Multiplication reactivated, the hero's attack is squared, and his eyes glow purple. He then decides to get rid of the high HP monster first, using only his skills. But his own attack causes 22,543 damage to himself. The adventurer activates Resistance, nullifying the fatal blow and reducing all damage to 0 for 5 seconds. However, all of his attack nullifications have been used up, and he only has 1 resistance left now. The previous blow only caused 48 damage to the defensive being, and he knows he's in for a problem. The hero checks his magic energy, which is almost gone, with only 21 points remaining. He realizes he has no more skills and his opponent has 1,200,000 health. Meanwhile, the creature's attacks continue, and the damage inflicted on the large monster reduces its health. The protagonist charges forward with a purple glow, hitting the enemy again and lowering its health even more. He continues his relentless battle, his face showing the tremendous effort to keep fighting. Delivering precise strikes, the adventurer persists in the combat, chipping away at the opponent's health to its limit. Sweating profusely, the young man shows exhaustion, but he doesn't give up on his goal of taking the being down. The hero then shouts in a final effort and directs his most powerful blow against the creature. A system message informs him that a miraculous force has been imprinted on his soul, granting him a new skill. But soon, another notification warns that because he escaped the labyrinth, the skill has been sealed. The defensive monster finally falls to the ground, making a sound of exhaustion after the intense battle. Even with the strategy focused on Monster 7, the fighter took down Monster 5 first. The protagonist's gaze reveals his fatigue and the satisfaction of having overcome another challenge. Wielding his sword, the young man stands with blood on his body, and the gods admire his feat. Despite everything, the warrior wonders how long he fought, feeling like more than a month has passed. The fighter decides it's time to return from combat, and his wounds are clearly visible. He walks away from the battle, leaving trails of blood along the path in the destroyed city. Just then, a targeting reticle with a red dot in the center lights up to scan something. Beams of light then shine in the city's ruins, marking the scene of chaos all around. The young man finds himself sitting on the blood-stained ground, his face filled with rage at the situation. But the fighter gets up with his sword, ready for whatever comes next, even though he's injured. Near him, other bodies lie lifeless amidst the scene of total destruction in that area. The hero questions why he, a simple player, survived when the other players couldn't. At that moment, he remembers his friends from the past, full of joy and smiles by his side. He then sees his fallen allies on the ground, covered in blood and the dust of battle everywhere. He remembers how one of them said he was going to the great beyond, as he had wished in ancient times. The young man with purple eyes maintains his firm and determined gaze, ready to press on in the fight. And he recalls all his companions smiling happily together in the distant past. But then the protagonist reflects on everything that happened in the difficult and grueling battle he faced. Finally, he spots a figure on the horizon, ready for a new challenge before him. In that instant, the warrior remembers a girl with dark hair and purple eyes who smiled at him. But then he sees the same young woman, fallen and bloodied amidst the rubble of destruction. In his mind, the hero remembers that she was the only one to complete solo mode and the strongest in the world. At that moment, a dark, viscous form emerges from the ground, and he thinks this figure was the one who defeated her. The fighter then faces the darkness spreading across the area, from which a monstrous shadow emerges. Meanwhile, the dense dark masses twist and rise, forming an imposing silhouette. In turn, the shadowy form takes shape and now boosts a single glowing and dangerous eye. Quickly, the figure reveals itself to be an apostle, an entity that says the adventurer will perish soon. However, the young man reacts with fury, telling the creature to get lost and resisting the mental attack. At this, the dark being is surprised by the opponent's resistance and shows astonishment. The protagonist then focuses his power, activating a precise aim and causing unexpected damage. Moments later, the warrior's face reveals the pain and effort of the battle with evident wounds. Even injured, he taunts the enemy to come and fight, showing all his anger at the situation. With this, his purple eyes crackle with electricity, revealing an unshakable determination. And he looks back at the scene of total destruction of the city, with collapsed buildings and smoke. Amidst the chaos, the hero faces the apostle, engulfed in intense flames, destroying the ground around it. The fighter's expression shows the strain of the fight, and sweat drips down his marked face. Just then, a small energy portal forms near the young man's feet, indicating the end of his skill. The opponent then attacks with force, and the protagonist is thrown backward into the rubble. With his face covered in blood, the guy reflects on the imminent end of the battle against the creature. A system message warns that his health has hit 0, but a skill is keeping him alive for 1 minute. Lying on the ground, the protagonist feels torn apart, unable to move the lower half of his body. The warrior realizes the skill only prolongs his demise and doesn't heal his severe injuries. With a defeated look, the young man knows he will perish soon, and the creature seems to understand his fate. The main character kneels, lamenting his situation, and the ground becomes stained with his blood. In that instant, a crack opens in the ground, with glowing electric energy, and the hero thinks about his choice. The fissure continues to grow with red and yellow lightning, showing the intense force hidden within. The young warrior regrets choosing easy mode. Maybe normal would have been better. He tries to resist the idea of the inevitable end amidst all the destruction surrounding him. A blood-soaked hand appears, and he curses the useless ones responsible for the current situation. The fighter displays a bloodied face with an expression of frustration in the face of chaos. And at that moment, he sees his fallen colleagues, and a voice accuses them of not having the strength for the labyrinth. His companions are defeated, and the voice questions how weak they were, even on normal or hard mode. Angrily, the hero punches the blood-stained ground and remembers his friends who could have done things differently. The protagonist then lifts his face in anger and pain, wishing things had been different. His eyes narrow and a drop of sweat runs down the bruised face of the one who fought to the end. Lying on the ground, the adventurer laments the situation, with his sword thrown nearby and blood spreading. There on the ground, the fighter understands that the past is gone, and it makes no sense to blame others for the disaster. With that, a bright light starts to emanate from the main character's hand, which is resting on his body. His purple eyes show fatigue and pain, but also a new determination as the marks remain. The young hero then sees a female figure with blue hair sitting on the ground, covered in blood. He notices a tentacle creature nearby, and that the woman was also trying to protect something. The protagonist is lying on the blood-stained ground with his arms raised in desperation. Meanwhile, the terrifying being moves towards the woman, who challenges it, telling it to stay put. Suddenly, the warrior plummets, and a screen announces that Last Chance has been activated, unleashing a super skill. The young fighter activates a skill, and time stops for 2 minutes within a 100-meter radius. On the ground, the hero holds a purple light in his hands, seeing a new chance that has emerged for him. Then a gem appears, the Bezoar of Ouroboros, which can turn back a person's time just once. Startled, the guy realizes he can change the past, but wonders why Li Taeon was there. Soon after, a red energy explodes, indicating an immense power that can change everything. He then sees the figure of Li Taeon challenging him with an intense gaze and a curt farewell. At that moment, the protagonist faces a giant monster, a terrifying creature he must confront. With his hand, the guy crushes the Bezoar gem, activating its power to reverse time. Suddenly, he sees himself as a child on a cold floor, hearing words that hurt him deeply. Then the adult version of the warrior appears before the boy, lamenting his own existence. The boy remembers his difficult past. His parents used him to vent, stripping him of his worth. But now the adult has a new goal and knows his worth and talent for the future that awaits him. Suddenly, the young man wakes up in his bed awkwardly, feeling strange. With wide eyes, he displays a surprised face at what is happening. Around him, a messy room shows empty cups and bottles, suggesting a slobbish life. He looks at the ceiling of the messy room, thinking about what happened in his life. Sitting on the floor, the guy holds his phone and realizes he has truly gone back in time. The device shows the date December 31st, 2019 at 11:02 p.m. A crowd of happy people celebrates the turn of the year to January 1st, 2020. At that moment, a strange energy appears in the sky, signaling the beginning of Earth's fall. The young man savors a slice of pizza and wonders how long it's been since the last time. That flavor is pure luxury because, in his past life, he only ate potatoes and monster carcasses. Quickly, the pizza box is empty and he lets out a sigh of satisfaction. Thoughtfully, the protagonist remembers Lee Tae-yeon and how she had an item to turn back time. He wonders why the girl didn't use this power, even with the desperate situation. The Tae-yeon he knew would have definitely run away, and that confuses him now. Through the window, the guy observes the illuminated city while holding his phone. There are only 2 minutes left until the new year, and the device shows 11:58 p.m. All over the world, people must be counting down to the new year. They welcome the new year full of hope, thinking that everything will get much better. A family happily watches television together while the cat rests on the woman's lap. Unfortunately, at the exact moment of the new year, a cosmic energy appears and the world begins to fall. On the streets, people wonder what that is, thinking it's just an event or fireworks. Punctually, the clock strikes midnight, and someone in the crowd is shocked to see the glow in the sky. A very intense red light descends from the heavens, hitting the city while everyone watches in terror. The protagonist observes the scene calmly, as he already knew the true nature of that creature. This monster was a B rank, something an experienced player could defeat without much effort. Many civilians are terrified by the creature's appearance, while others can't even react. The young man looks at the sky and thinks it's about time for something to happen, and a screen appears before him. Then a bright blue holographic interface appears and says hello to the protagonist and others. The screen reveals that the world will be destroyed by invaders and human weapons are useless. A frightened reporter tries to cover the chaos while a helicopter attempts to fight the dragon. However, the system informs them, "Don't worry," as the monster prepares for a devastating attack. The creature displays a hungry and menacing look as it prepares to devastate everything. A screen explains that a being took pity on them as the dragon attacks the streets with fire and panic. The woman screams in despair as people run in fear through the scene of destruction. A child cries in fear, and at the same time, a screen reveals that a being will give everyone a chance. Amidst the destruction, a woman tries to save someone trapped in the rubble in a scene of horror. Observing from above, the city square is packed with tiny people running in all directions. Another person is in tears, begging for help, and the screen explains they will be given a choice for the labyrinth. The protagonist observes everything amidst the fire and thinks this mercy is a load of crap. Looking up, the guy sees the options easy, normal, hard, and solo, and thinks it's all just for their amusement. The young protagonist remains motionless as a light ascends to the sky, and a smaller version of him appears there. In a closer shot, the young man's purple eyes glow, revealing a serious expression. He thinks to himself, why not just get on with it now and face what's coming without hesitation? Easy mode guarantees plentiful food and rest areas, and even the weakest can win. In normal mode, food is scarce and rest areas are rare, fighting will be a challenge. Hard mode pushes your limits with almost non-existent food and rest and dangerous monsters. Solo mode is for those who prefer to act alone, without help, relying only on their own strength. In this mode, the young man won't encounter other people from his world, only creatures and NPCs. In a place where luck, intelligence, and strategy are tested, no one could possibly survive. A screen appears, warning that if he values his life, it's better not to choose this difficulty. Smiling, the guy thinks he's beyond that challenge and tells someone to wait for him. With solo mode chosen, a good luck message appears and he walks towards a bright light. Suddenly, the main character appears on a street in an old city with medieval buildings. A strong sense of nostalgia and familiarity washes over the young hero as he observes the place. With a slight smile, the protagonist thinks that after a long time, he has finally returned to that place. A blue holographic screen appears with the name Kang Jun-hyuk in solo mode, and he wonders what this is. The young man points to the screen and is surprised to see a post made by someone who seems smart. The community is the way to talk to other players from different difficulties and exchange tips. Thinking, the protagonist decides he'll only be able to use the community effectively later. Walking, the character thinks about what he needs to check and asks Tae-yeon about the NPCs in easy mode. Tae-yeon replies that the NPCs repeated canned lines like robots and asks if his were different. The woman then explains that the NPCs in solo mode acted intelligently and moved like real people. The tired hero leans against a wall, feeling the sunlight touch his face at that moment. Tae-yeon explains about the labyrinth's guardian in easy mode, who looked like an old man with white hair. The protagonist then spots someone and is surprised, as he thought it would take a while to find him. In front of him, a shadowy figure appears, stronger than Lee Tae-yeon, and this is the gatekeeper. The protector introduces himself as Brokeman and says he is the guardian of this place and also the player's guide. Startled, the protagonist asks if the name means broken man, but the guardian actually thinks it sounds cool. He explains that the young man's world is in danger and a higher being gave this chance to everyone. The guardian then comments that a complete destruction would have been happier, showing a dark side. The hero then realizes that the guide speaks like someone who has been through this before, confirming what Tazen said. With that, the Guardian reveals that the NPCs in solo mode are living beings from other destroyed worlds. Next, the protagonists and the guide's eyes meet, with a serious expression from both. The Protector wonders why the young man is so calm if he came from a peaceful place. Thinking of teaching the protagonist a lesson, the Guardian is surprised because he sees no reaction. Pointing upwards, the guide shows the labyrinth, also called the Tower, and the young man can call it whatever he wants. He reveals that the tower has 100 floors, and every 10, the difficulty increases, making the journey harder. The Protector warns that everyone must find food and water on their own and seek information for themselves. Curious, the young hero asks if the guide's explanation really ends there without any more details. With that, the Guardian yawns and asks if the boy wants to know about every floor but points to a merchant. The Portal Protector was quite annoying, and a warrior with him almost got a beatdown for complaining before entering. The guide then points his finger, and a bluish energy appears at the tip, indicating a mysterious power. At that moment, the Labyrinth's Protector says he will at least explain the basics about the place to the young man. He then grabs a cloth and starts cleaning a kind of staff, while the blue energy still surrounds him. The Guardian then raises the weapon firmly, and the energy around it changes to a vibrant green hue. With a serious look, the protagonist observes every move of the Protector, trying to understand the situation. The protagonist's gaze turns serious. He observes every move of the Gatekeeper, trying to understand what's happening. Then the Guardian Brokeman shows a confident smile as he prepares an item for delivery. Suddenly, the Guardian moves quickly towards the guy, and a strong light accompanies his steps. The young man then prepares to receive something as the man approaches with the tip of the item glowing. In front of the hero, the Guardian extends the spear with its sharp and shiny tip towards the guy. Smiling, the man looks at the adventurer with the spear in his hand, seeming satisfied with his demonstration. Finally, he approaches and with a look of approval, hands the powerful item to the protagonist. The hero smiles, holding the new weapon, and a warning appears about his worn-out armor and rusted sword. With that, the Protector comments that the weapon is made of copper and asks if the boy didn't like the gift. The protagonist replies that he doesn't, and the man observes the fellow with a serious and thoughtful look. The adventurer asks what happened, and the Guardian replies that it was nothing, so the two were outside. Next, the Protector throws a worn-out wrist guard to the guy, who catches it and wonders what it was. The man explains that he would receive skills and tells the guy to enter the labyrinth, so the young man thanks him. The Guardian just wishes the traveler good luck as he walks away, entering the portal. As the man watched the newcomer, the warrior turned around, smiling as if he was looking forward to the challenge. The Protector thought about the geniuses he had known, but none of them had managed to clear the dreaded labyrinth. But this new adventure was different, and the man watches as he heads inside the place. It wasn't just about talent or skill, it was something deeper, an internal strength to survive. Sitting down, the Guardian expresses his wish that the challenger can survive in the dangerous labyrinth. A dark, elongated shadow is cast on the nearby wall, creating a mysterious atmosphere. Meanwhile, a blue screen appears in front of the hero with information from a news system. The young man pays close attention. The explorer sees the labyrinth created by a great mage and a rumor of a wish for whoever clears it. A colossal dragon hovers, revealing a sinister message that terrifying beings move in silence. Then the screen shows a bright light at the end of a tunnel with promises of glory for whoever wins. The protagonist then appears with his new sword, ready to face the approaching challenge. At that moment, the screen indicates first floor, entrance to the labyrinth where weak creatures dwell. The young man then smiles confidently, wondering if he should start his adventure, and a new mission appears. The hero then walks down a corridor, and the screen shows information about secret locations and rewards. Further ahead, in a different scene, two characters talk about a merchant from the game's easy mode. They then continue the conversation about the type of vendor who only sold potions to adventurers. The woman pulls something out and says that their mode was different because the vendor offered many things. She shows a bracelet of shadows, a high-level item that reduces damage by 50%. The guy's eyes widen in amazement, and he asks if that powerful item was really sold in the shop. Another person observes various weapons and armors, remembering there was much more, but they had no gold. The young hero reflects on everything he has heard, attentive to the system's information and his possibilities. The adventurer looks at a closed door, thinking that by buying everything in the shop, he would become stronger. In that instant, the door is highlighted, showing that before he didn't care about items, but now that has changed. Opening the door, he finds an old man with a pipe who seems surprised, and the screen reveals him as the Lost King. Our hero just stares at him with a calm and serene expression, showing no reaction. The old man greets him and praises his mental state, which seems to be in excellent condition. The man then asks for his name, and the young man replies that he is Tay-san and questions if he is the shopkeeper. Tay-san glances sideways with a serious expression, analyzing the environment of that mysterious shop. He notices the empty shelves and comments to the old man that there is nothing for sale there. With that, the merchant calls him young man and explains that to display all his items, he would need a space larger than the entire first floor of that labyrinth. But the old man states that he has no intention of showing his goods to the guy. The hero is confused, wondering about a shopkeeper who sells nothing in his own shop. So the young man asks him what the reason is for him being there if he doesn't intend to sell his products. The question seems to have irritated the man, and his gaze suddenly fills with fury. Angrily, he slams the counter and yells that he was forced out of his kingdom because of monsters. The shopkeeper then says he won't show his items to ignore muses, and the guy just replies that he understands. Although he seems calmer, his hand squeezing the pipe shows that he is still quite ticked off. The white, bearded man says he might change his mind if the young man shows him who he really is. The protagonist listens attentively to the man's words with a serious look on his face. The old man then repeats to the guy that he needs to come back alive to be able to see all his items. The young man stares at the old man with his purple eyes, conveying a sense of confidence and tranquility. The guy then asks if the main condition for the sale is just to survive, and if that's correct. The old man is surprised by the young man's calmness and becomes thoughtful as the boy observes him. The old man is shocked by the boy's reaction and questions the reason for such strangeness from that fellow. Sunlight streams in through the window, illuminating the place where the two men are talking. The young man asks if he needs to clear a labyrinth to see the items and quickly says goodbye to the old man. The protagonist turns his back and starts walking with a tranquil expression amidst the points of light. The old man watches the young man walk away and wonders about his calmness in such a dangerous moment. The guy descends the stairs without hesitation, showing his determination to face the approaching challenge. The protagonist has a firm gaze and seems to feel no fear at all in the face of the imminent danger. The old man sighs and thinks that the young man probably won't come back anyway, so it doesn't matter much. Lit torches on the stone wall illuminate the path to the mysterious labyrinth that awaits him. The young man enters the labyrinth with his sword and notices that the structure is the same as in easy mode. Suddenly, the protagonist hears a strange noise, and a red light appears in front of him. With that, a giant creature appears in the corridor, a huge rat with red eyes holding a skull. The guy is surprised and wonders if that is really a rat, but he already feels the danger coming his way. The monster attacks with force, and the adventurer takes 10 damage. He then realizes the creature was a boss. The young man's gaze becomes more serious as he understands the difficulty of the challenge he must face. This creature has weak defenses but moves at a speed that is hard to follow and defeat. He remembers that a girl named Li Taeyeon ran from this creature, and now our hero understands why. Our hero thinks that no player who passed the first floor dared to fight that giant rat. With that, the final blow hits the creature, defeating it for good, and its blood splatters on the floor. An old man with a white beard appears in front of an arch, holding a spoon in his hand. The older man then leans on a large table while the guy watches him attentively. The young warrior then smiles slightly and understands the situation surrounding him better now. The adventurer realizes that the labyrinth's reward system works in a simple and clear way. By doing what no one else can, the fighter might take some damage, but he also earns his reward. In other words, by performing a feat that everyone recognizes, the warrior will receive a fitting reward. Thus, the protagonist's main goal is to become the strongest of all in this place. Suddenly, the giant monster looks surprised as it's hit by the young fighter's attack. However, the hero analyzes that if he can't match the enemy's speed, he needs to predict its movements. Soon, the huge rodent is panting, showing signs of fatigue after the intense fight. The guy reflects that every living creature needs to breathe, and has tells before each action. He thus observes the muscles in the creature's leg contracting and its chest rising, a sign to attack. At that moment, the fearless warrior launches a powerful blue energy strike against the enraged animal. With this, the giant beast feels intimidated, and its decision-making ability becomes slower. Finally, the fighter deduces that with its small brain, the creature can no longer attack his feet. Blue energy radiated from the young fighter's arm, indicating a powerful, recently launched attack. The giant monster then lets out a roar of pain and surprise after being hit by the hero's blow. The adventurer then takes the chance and lands a strong punch on the wild animal's face. With that, the massive rodent is paralyzed, and the young fighter states that the battle has come to an end. Next, the fearless warrior finishes off the beast with a precise strike from his stained sword. The protagonist strikes the monster with his sword, which glows with blue energy as the creature resists. The guy's gaze shows total focus as he prepares to continue the battle. He notes the monster's speed and crouches to deliver a new attack with his sword. In the past, to hunt this creature, players needed to cooperate and fight together. The young man realizes he is alone and his skills are much lower, making victory difficult. The combat system shows that the creature has been incapacitated and has taken a lot of damage. With that, the protagonist returns to the shop where the white-bearded man is smoking a pipe. The old man's eyes fill with surprise, realizing the young hero's prowess. The guy then announces his return, and the shopkeeper offers the monster's meat as a reward. However, the adventurer and the old merchant see messages from other players complaining about the shop owner. The woman next to the vendor also observes the messages about his arrogant behavior. Even though she's annoyed, the warrior contains herself upon seeing the customer's irritation, wanting to attack the merchant. At that moment, the old man looks at the woman and asks if her colleague is still alive. Next, the merchant asks if the young man also wished harm upon the other warrior, but he denies the accusation. Finally, the screen shows the items obtained from the creature: high-quality meat and hide. The young hero asks the shopkeeper if he buys things and for what price. Analyzing it closely, the old man notes that the rat's meat and hide are high quality. The merchant reflects on the present newbie and notes that the guy is very young for the labyrinth. The shopkeeper then agrees to open the shop because the boy accepted the conditions and asks what he sells. The adventurer thinks for a moment and asks the vendor if he has a tower shield. The old man confirms if it's a very large shield, and the guy says he wants one he can carry with 2 hands. The hero smiles and points, informing him that it's to attack everyone at the same time. At this, the old man's eyes light up with understanding, and he states that this is the right answer. Next, the old merchant turns around, and a giant golden door appears behind him. At that moment, the young man curiously observes the golden door that has appeared. The shopkeeper holds up a large blue tower shield with +1 attack and +5 defense. The hero holds the item, noticing its high quality, and thinks it comes from the 7th level of easy mode. The old man informs him that the price is 500 gold, but the guy only has 243. The young man turns to leave, saying he needs 7 more rats to get the money. The shopkeeper then stops him from leaving and says he will give him the shield for free, surprising the hero. The vendor tells the young adventurer that with his 250 gold, he can get other things. The view then focuses on the hero's eye, revealing a drop of sweat and his surprise at the situation. Soon the protagonist finds himself surrounded by many potions, questioning what is happening. He observes the table filled with items, thinking this is different from what he heard from Li Taeyan. The guy then asks the old merchant why he is giving him so many items. Quickly, the shopkeeper explains to the explorer that he should consider it an investment. The vendor asks the newbie to be quiet and choose his items, and the young man realizes he won't get any more details. While analyzing the products, the hero holds a resistance potion and notes that they are recovery liquids. He also thinks about other potions to increase attack power and speed in the labyrinth. Contemplating the table with many vials, the guy realizes he doesn't need these items urgently. Seeing a warrior use potions, the young man recalls that it's hard to get these liquids in solo mode. Therefore, he decides not to buy the potions at the moment, as he believes they might be a trap. Thinking it over, the explorer decides to use his gold on items he really needs, like a bow. Affirming his need for a direct attack, the protagonist imagines using the weapon to deal with monsters. Finally, the young man asks the vendor the price for the hide, and the merchant offers 70 gold. The guy says he will sell it and buy a bow with arrows, because he needs a direct attack. With that, the old shopkeeper is very pleased and smiles at the young man with great satisfaction. At that moment, the vendor hands a bow with arrows to the protagonist, who seems quite confused. Next, the merchant explains that energy recovery is impossible in the labyrinth, and the adventurer agrees. The man then reveals that on the 1st level, there is a fountain of life to recover energy. The vendor then indicates the fountain's location on the map and mentions a strange person at the location. The merchant also reveals that Li Taeyan received the same information but treated him with contempt. The explorer then wonders why the shopkeeper suddenly changed his attitude so much. As he thinks, he remembers that the other player ran from the giant rat, but he didn't. Furthermore, he recalls that the monster was incapacitated and the attacks caused a lot of damage. Finally, he remembers defeating the creature, but there are still many things he doesn't understand. He holds his shield and realizes that his spirituality skill has been activated. With this, his agility increased by 1 point, and the adventurer wonders how he gained so much. The protagonist visualizes his new skills like swordsmanship, suresight, and detection. He is incredulous to learn all of this on the 1st level of solo mode, as it seems unbelievable. He observes a new spiritual ability appearing unexpectedly before his eyes. The young man enters a state of absorption, his body and mind unite in a miraculous process. However, the ability fails because he is outside the labyrinth, canceling the process. At that moment, his energy dropped significantly and a window appeared, but he was too exhausted to read it. This ability remains over time, and the adventurer decides to move forward to get stronger. Torches illuminate a dark corridor inside the gloomy labyrinth. Walking through this corridor, he believes he will soon see the fountain of life he is looking for. Suddenly, a large rat monster appears in the protagonist's path for his challenge. Again, a giant rodent challenges him, but he was already expecting to encounter monsters in the passage. More than one giant rat with glowing red eyes appears, surrounding the area. He finds himself in a complicated situation and realizes he has fallen into an ambush. The explorer is in a difficult situation, but his eyes shine with confidence. The adventurer is now surrounded by 3 giant rats and prepares to fight. The creatures realize their numerical advantage against the human who is surrounded by them. While the system tries to assess his state, he remains calm and ready for battle. The monstrous rat prepares its attack, showing sharp teeth and glowing eyes. The adventurer defends against the rodent's attack with his shield, and a success message appears. As he defends, he shows great mental strength, and the creature continues to attack. With an unshakable mind, the guy faces the monster, and his attributes receive a boost. The young man then uses his magical power to attack, hitting the rat's body with his shield. At that moment, one of the rodents is thrown far away, and the hero thinks that his new skills are useful. He successfully defeats the 2 giant rats and his power level rises significantly. The last giant rodent is now intimidated by the explorer, and its movements become slow. With that, the remaining rat screams and runs towards the hero for a final attack. The adventurer then stumps hard on the creature, crushing the rodent's body on the ground. He raises his shield in victory and thanks the monster for coming at him without fear. Suddenly, a simple wooden door appears on a wall illuminated by sunlight. The young man looks at the newly appeared door and calmly adjusts the scarf around his neck. He finds the labyrinth sanctuary a safe place and is the first to find the fountain of life. Receiving a bonus for his discovery, his intelligence and mana also increase permanently. It is revealed that the labyrinth has monsters almost everywhere, but the fountain is a safe area. The young man takes advantage of the tranquility to drink the water from the fountain, quenching his thirst. A golden light envelopes the hero, and a message confirms that he is in his best condition. He feels relieved as if after a good night's sleep, but the mental fatigue requires rest. The next day, he wonders if a day has passed and thinks about the online community. The explorer extends his hand to the luminous screen that displays important information. A new adventurer named Kang Jun Hike appears asking if he can enter alone. Na Jaein replies that it's not safe, because those who entered alone have not been heard from again. Another player is looking for someone to go to the first floor and asks about the monsters. Lee Sang says he is exhausted, and it becomes clear that solo players can only communicate through the forum. The protagonist reflects on the messages, observing the situation of the other adventurers. A slight smile appears on the guy's face, who seems to have had a smart idea. The screen shows desperate messages from Li Tae, yet asking what to do now. The strongest player seems surprised and confused, an unexpected reaction from her. Sitting, the adventurer notices that the girl is scared and wonders if she has always been a coward. The adventurer reflects on the labyrinth and the recent wave of players who entered alone. With that, his hands type quickly on a holographic keyboard, seeking more information. There, the reward system and the unfair method of the server's strongest player are displayed. Other explorers also receive notifications about new important updates to the dungeon. A basic strategy for the first floor then appears, showing the difficulty of advancing without a guide. Even with the guide, the young man doubts its effectiveness, as only one person has survived solo mode. The guy then decides to start his journey slowly, holding an object that begins to glow. He finds a piece of rat meat with 86% quality, which can be eaten. The boy hesitates to consume the raw food but thinks it might be his best option at the moment. He then bites the meat, and the system confirms that the guy ate the uncooked meal on purpose. Quickly, the young explorer feels nauseous, and his face shows enormous discomfort. The screen warns of an abnormal condition and reveals that he has suffered severe food poisoning. Because of this, he needs to drink healing potions as the condition has been draining his strength for 2 days. This type of situation is a nightmare for newbies, and many do not survive this poisoning. With that, he sighs in relief, and the system informs him that his physical condition is perfect again. The adventurer then bites the raw meat, and the text window confirms that he ate the meal. The guy knows that emergency food is expensive and limited in the labyrinth, being hard to find. Quickly, he feels nauseous and vomits a dark substance, confirming the poisoning. With that, the protagonist suffers greatly, and the system warns that his condition is perfect again. He then realizes that his body is beginning to recover, and he gradually feels more satiated. At that moment, the system announces that he has developed resistance to diseases, gaining a passive skill. The screen shows details of the new ability, which decreases the chances of getting sick from spoiled food. With this new power, he thinks about becoming immune to poisons and seeks a next ability in the water. The young man dives in and shows discomfort with the situation, hating what he has to do now. As he submerges, the protagonist continues to force himself to stay underwater in a great effort. The screen shows that he is out of air and feels great pain, needing to endure this torture at the moment. He thinks that drowning is the most painful way to go, enduring the terrible moment of pain. The water bubbles intensely, revealing the continuous effort of the explorer beneath the surface. Suddenly, the guy emerges with difficulty and gains the active skill apnea for almost being taken out. Soon after, the system informs him that he recognized his own demise and gained the passive skill Death's Door. He reacts to the difficult moment, sweating profusely and with a pained expression. The explorer seems exhausted. Holding his head, the young man reads a screen about apnea, which consumes little mana and increases breath holding time. Next, another text window appears, showing the active ability to help in toxic places. The guy reflects on the rare achievement for nearly getting wiped out and sees Death's Door as a good result. Unexpectedly, the new passive skill shows 54% mastery. He then wonders if the 54% mastery was inherited in some way. A close-up of his glowing purple eyes reflects the intensity of his thoughts about the powers. Thinking about everything, the young man decides not to worry so much about the details and just move forward. After all, unexplainable things happen in the labyrinth, and he knows he shouldn't overthink it. Suddenly, his hand glows and he summons a blue energy sword, demonstrating a new power. With the weapon in hand, the hero shows determination and says there are more skills to acquire. Meanwhile, Kang Jun Hyatt questions his Hyang about the path to take, thinking it's all crazy. Kang Tae-san replies that it's high risk, high reward, and that the time to act is now. Annoyed, his Hyang says he will regret it later, and Jun Hyuk is desperate, not knowing what to do. Finally, Kang Tae-san's face appears, determined with his eyes shining for what's to come. The protagonist has the breathless system activated, enveloped in a bright blue aura. The text window explains that there is something called skill combination for evolution. With the sword in hand, he prepares for action, showing determination with the energy surrounding him. Next, the young man advances at high speed, delivering a powerful attack with the energized blade. The system shows that by being breathless, it's possible to hold one's breath to do several things at once. The adventurer jumps, performing quick movements in the air with his body enveloped in a purple energy. The hero's face is sweating, showing slight fatigue after the continuous efforts to train. Drops of sweat run down the guy's skin as he opens his mouth to catch his breath. The young man then takes a deep breath, lifting his scarf, showing exhaustion after using the skill. With that, the system congratulates him for executing multiple actions and gaining the one-breath attack. The system also warns that he has acquired more than 10 skills and is now a skill player. The explorer smiles, satisfied looking at his sword, finding the new achievements interesting. In addition, the system explains that humans have an action time, like a rat before attacking. And the breathless attack helps to change the timing to be faster, hitting the giant creature. Suddenly, a screen appears showing that this was a technique widely used before leaving the labyrinth. The adventurer analyzes his status window, which reveals his level 3 in agility at 21. At that moment, the young man approaches a door and thinks he can create a core skill now. The core skill usually has a value greater than 10 skills or enhances weak attributes. With this power increases attack or identifies hidden elements and can even pause time. Possessing only one core skill, the user dominates other players of the same level. One of the protagonist's arms extends while other hands surround him in a field of blue energy. He conjures a blue aura, but the system warns that these techniques have demanding conditions to obtain. The young man then realizes it's possible to create a core skill on the first level and decides to try. Suddenly, a huge rat appears in his path, ready to attack the guy without hesitation. The hero prepares for the fight with a shield, saying he needs to acquire the monster's skill. Next, the creature attacks the adventurer's leg, causing 4 points of damage instantly. Despite this, the protagonist remains serene as another attack causes 3 damage to him. The rat attacks the adventurer again, causing 4 more points of damage to his leg. The young man observes the creature, amused, and decides to let it have a little more fun before acting. Several damage messages appear, and the protagonist continues to receive attacks from the creature nonstop. The huge beast attacks the adventurer again, causing 3 more damage and entering an empty phase. The young man just watches the creature, thinking he only needs a few more attacks for his plan. Another blow from the rat hits him squarely, taking 4 damage and putting his life in danger. With this, the protagonist's death mastery increases by 3%, showing his resistance. The calm mastery also rises by 2% as the warrior stands firm with his shield. The rat then attacks again with full force, going for the hero's leg and leaving him in danger. But now, the young man uses his shield to successfully block the beast's blow, defending the attack. Soon, a message informs him that he has successfully blocked the opponent's attack, and the creature has fallen. He then acquires the blocking skill, a good technique, but not what he really wanted. Even so, the monster attacks one more time, putting his life at risk, but he blocks it again. Suddenly, an image of himself appears behind the warrior, showing a new ability. We then see a fighter with a sword in a mysterious place, surrounded by very strong lightning. With this technique, the warrior can nullify a lethal blow once and remove all damage for a time. Contemplating the ability, he realizes that only he will benefit from this new incredible technique. The hero then focuses his gaze on something beyond sight, showing his determination and fighting spirit. The protagonist's friends watch him sitting on the lizards and ask about the new ability. The young adventurer then looks up and reflects on how only he has that unique power. In the labyrinth, there are ways to get techniques, like learning from someone or completing difficult tasks. It's also possible to acquire skill by imitating its effect, and the warrior seems very serious. He says he got the breathless technique by holding his breath, and then the breathless attack. The hero then questions how to obtain the power that nullifies fatal blows as the rat approaches. The creature attacks the challenger's leg again, and a warning appears saying his life is at risk. The protagonist's gaze shows deep concentration, and his purple eye glows intensely. The warrior explains with a smile that you just have to block deadly attacks non-stop to acquire the technique. The champion blocks a blow that would have taken him out, and acquires the special ability to stand firm. The guy seems annoyed at the idea of always having to block deadly attacks. The rat then attacks again with full force, and an explosion of light occurs at the impact. But the hero clenches his fist confidently, as fear is no excuse with the technique that saves him. The adventurer's 2 friends fall silent and show slight surprise at the scene. The girl smiles, saying Tae-san is crazy, and her friend says it's still dangerous but normal. The young man thinks about the labyrinth and how he needs to risk his life to get things. At that moment, the adventurer stops to drink some water and quench his thirst. Meanwhile, a wound appears on his leg and the area begins to glow strangely. Sitting, the protagonist realizes he has increased the mastery of a special skill and wonders if there are others. He then reflects on the 200 skills that might exist in that special place. Suddenly, an older man appears with a loud voice and announces a mysterious guest. A system warning appears, revealing that he has found the man who seeks God. The champion then uses his skill, showing an interesting reaction to the warrior. With that, the man advances, and the challenger raises his shield, realizing it's an NPC because monsters don't enter there. The protagonist is thoughtful, as all the NPCs in solo mode were strange people, and the old man asks if he is an adventurer. The man explains that they explore the labyrinth to conquer it, and the young man replies that he fits that description. The guy tells his friends that a strange man approached him near the Fountain of Life, thinking he was a knight of a god. He struggles to remember what the girl said next and needs to recall it very quickly. At that, the white-haired man attacks the hero, who is thrown backward with great force. The warrior then activates a non-lethal attack and challenges the young man to try and block it. The white-haired man activates his attack against the young hero without mercy. At this, the young warrior's eyes widen as he realizes the intensity of that blow. With that, a system warning appears, showing that his death's door has been activated. The champion then raises his shield with all his strength to try and block the attack. In that instant, the older man's fist hits the adventurer's shield dead on. The experienced warrior hits the young man's shield with a very powerful blow. His face then contorts in pain and effort as he endures the attack. The warrior leans under the force of the blow, with his face almost covered by the shield. The white-haired man observes the scene with a calm and tranquil expression. The young adventurer is then pushed backward by the continuous force of the blow. With that, the young man's body glows as he receives the power of the mountain, increasing his power by 1. The older man pulls his fist away from the hero's shield and asks a question. The young man realizes he can't escape his opponent's next move. The warrior is thus thrown far away by the impact of that man's attack. The white-haired man shows a serious and focused look on the guy. He seems impressed by what he sees at that moment of battle. At this, the young warrior's purple eyes glow intensely after the blow he suffered. Fallen, the adventurer observes the system displaying 35,211 points of damage. With a surprised expression, the young man wonders about the power of this enemy in solo mode. The old man approaches the kneeling hero and continues to express his astonishment at the situation. The master praises the adventurer for blocking the attack and quickly dissipating the damage with his strategy. The warrior declares that he doesn't accept having been defeated, and the opponent confirms his statement. The old man reveals that his blow had no lethal intent, as there was no malice in the action. The two then shake hands, and the master says the young man can withstand his intense attacks without fear. The old man praises the guy's ability to survive on the edge of demise, even with low stats. The champion reflects on his opponent's knowledge, even though he claims to be a simple NPC. The old warrior then says his concern was for nothing and asks for the young adventurer's name. Ainchar introduces himself to the young warrior Kang Tae, and greets him with a big smile. Elsewhere, a blue-haired girl appears reflected in the water, looking scared. The young woman is kneeling near the water, revealing she is tired and being pursued by enemies. She thinks that since she has come so far, she should be fine, but a mysterious observer is nearby. The girl then hears a strange noise and turns her head with a look of surprise and astonishment. Suddenly, a swift fist launches towards the woman's face without her being able to react. However, the blow stops just short of the woman's face, and she stares, shocked at the scene. The old man appears in front of her and asks if she is a weak coward, with a doubtful expression. The girl remains on the ground, and the knight observes her as a message states that Lee Tae-Yin has been demoted. Meanwhile, the white-haired master shakes hands with the young warrior, who seems annoyed. The adventurer questions the old man why he attacked him suddenly, and if he enjoys bullying the weaker ones. The old man explains that he is a holy knight and would never pursue someone without a just reason. He says he was just evaluating the people who arrive at that place, and the boy is confused. The master adds that he checks their worthiness to survive there, and if they deserve his approval. With that, the old man informs the guy that he passed the evaluation and praises him greatly for his feat. The warrior then asks if the other's name is Ainchar, and he confirms, saying it was given by his father. The protagonist then questions what kind of god the master was looking for, since he mentioned it before. In this dark place, a being with ruby eyes sits on a throne of bones, revealing many gods in the labyrinth. We then see several goddesses testing the adventurers and offering valuable rewards. However, most players weren't interested because the gods only existed in solo mode. Fortunately, a woman named Lee Tae-Yin discovered how terrible the gods were. The old man smiles, saying that the more people who know his god, the better would be for everyone. He then reveals that he serves Lebanon, the goddess of love, showing a beautiful image of her. Everyone served her and shouted her name because she was a good goddess who united lovers. Unfortunately, the old man says his world was destroyed and only he remembers her now. The young man then asks if the old man came here to find her, and the knight confirms. The protagonist says he knows Lebanon too, thanking Lee Tae-Yin for knowing where she is. Meanwhile, Lee Tae-Yin seems worried, wondering if there's a problem with this revelation. The young woman finds the goddess fallen and devastated, with a place full of pain and darkness. The guy reads Lee Tae-Yin's messages, which express shock and disgust with the god's situation. The protagonist thinks that if the adventurer who overcame so much says it's terrible, then it must be true. The old man asks the young man if he can ask a question, and the guy obliges, curious. The old man questions if the adventurer needs to rush to the labyrinth, but he just wants to get stronger. A close-up shows the old man's hands, revealing a gesture of attention, and he seems ready to continue. The old man then smiles very happily and asks the young man if he is interested in learning the goddess's skill. The protagonist promptly replies that he would love to learn such a thing. The old man is surprised by the guy's immediate response, and he says there's no reason to refuse. The adventurer thinks that the old man is very strong and doesn't understand why an NPC has so much power. The protagonist then asks what the price would be, but the old man says it's an apology. The master explains that even though it was a test, the attack was unacceptable for a newbie, and he should repent. The young man then asks the old man why he attacked him, and the old man says that's another matter. The old man explains that he only apologizes to those who deserve it, otherwise he would have left. The old man says words are worthless and therefore offers a valuable skill for the adventure. The protagonist thinks that gaining a new skill with a weak attack is better than risking his life. The old man declares that there is no more time to wait, and it's time to start learning. Excited, the old man asks the guy to attack him with that weak shield he uses. The scene shows many skills in the labyrinth, with swords and shields scattered on the floor. The young man sees that swordsmanship is for swords, shield technique for shields, and spear technique for spears. Basic skills are obtained by using weapons, and mastery increases with knowledge of use. So this skill is common to all players, as most already have the weapons. A close-up shows the young man's hand touching the ground amidst the many weapons. But there's a skill that unites all techniques, and the hero kneels to learn. Even though it's not flashy, they say it's the best, and the guy cries, being comforted by the goddess. The master reveals that the technique is called Arak-style arms technique, and the goddess praised him for its creation. Our hero looks confused as he processes the information received. The old man then asks if the adventurer found the art useless, as combining skills doesn't change the damage. This system error makes it useless to combine weapon techniques, and the young man questions his attack bonus. The protagonist replies that his bonus is 1, and the teacher calculates that the total should be 4. With that, the old man activates a target lock, making his attack damage fixed. The guy then wields his shield and seems ready to deliver his blow. The young man attacks the master with the shield and causes 4 damage, as he had predicted. The teacher asks if he really needed to hit the head, and the adventurer apologizes right away. The old man then asks the hero to attack him with his fist, and the boy thinks about not messing up again. The protagonist prepares to attack his mentor with a punch right in the chest. Quickly, the young man hits the master and causes 2 damage as expected. The old man asks if the adventurer understood his point, and he questions the damage variation. The teacher confirms his statement and explains that adventurers usually use only one weapon. He shows that a sword deals 20 damage and a gauntlet 50, but they don't add up to a total of 70. The master then argues that if the damage added up, everyone would use multiple weapons at the same time. That's why they focus on mastering a single weapon to have the best possible proficiency. But the old man questions if it wouldn't be inconvenient to use only one weapon in battle, calling it absurd. Because in the end, combat is a matter of life or death, and one should use every part of the body. The teacher explains that the goddess's church didn't like this low damage because of the system error. The old man then reveals he created the Arak-style arms technique to combine all skills and equipment power. The young adventurer seems to understand the idea of a total combination of attack power. The mentor details that a sword and gauntlet would give a total of 70 damage in any strike. And he explains that the technique doesn't just apply to weapons but to all parts of the body. Thus, all of the hero's attacks would cause 70 damage with his hand, shoulder, or even a kick. The young adventurer demonstrates that he has understood the idea of combining attack power. The old master then argues that with this new art, he can use all the equipment that was previously discarded. Questioning how one can attack with a belt or a ring, the old man shows the importance of his technique. The apprentice then crosses his arms and reflects that this new skill seems very useful. Next, the guy thinks that this technique can be considered a core skill in battles. The old man reveals to the hero that this is a skill that common adventurers could never learn. And he asks the guy if he is interested in learning that powerful technique, and he accepts right away. With a smile, the master instructs the young man to relax his entire body to begin the power transmission. Next, the teacher explains that this is a skill he developed himself and can be passed on easily. The old man adds that his 100% proficiency guarantees that the student will receive all the knowledge. At that moment, the young man feels various techniques and information entering his mind suddenly. The warrior receives the skill from the creator of the Arak-style arms technique, feeling a great flow of energy. He thus acquires the art, a maximum level skill, but with only 1% proficiency. The mentor advises his pupil to train daily to achieve full proficiency and offers something more. Finally, the old man gifts the student a faded ring that adds 1 damage and reminds him of what's important. The young man looked at the ring and thought that before he'd have thrown it away, but now the item was very valuable. The old man pondered that he had already given all the knowledge, but it was a shame to part so soon. With a glint in his eyes, the master asked if the student wanted to fight him to test his new skill. The wise man asked if the hero didn't wish to test the newly learned technique before a real combat. The guy understood the proposal and said he saw no reason to refuse, and a blue aura covered his body. The two then positioned themselves in an open field to start the training and prepared for combat. The young man was ready with his shield in position, and a wave of purple energy approached them. At that moment, the old master delivered a powerful blow with his fist, and the pupil managed to block it. Meanwhile, a text about the labyrinth informs that all actions performed there are evaluated. The old man continued his offensive, and the young warrior once again defended himself with the shield. Another system message appeared, saying that searching for things in useless places increases proficiency. A new piece of information revealed that blocking enemy attacks non-stop raises shield proficiency. The two continued the intense fight, and various magical effects illuminated the combat environment. The guy then launched an energy slash against the master, and the system said that fighting the strong has value. The young adventurer was lying on the ground, exhausted, and wondered if they had fought for 2 whole days. The system shows a continuous battle skill with 3% proficiency and little exhaustion. The young man thinks that with this technique, he managed to fight a strong monster for many days. The master approaches the lying guy, praising his incredible talent and perception for a newbie. With a smile, the old man asks the student if the training was enough for him. The boy replies yes to the old man, showing satisfaction with the result of that practice. The experienced master then sits before him, asking for 2 promises, and the apprentice agrees. The first promise is that the Iraq-style arms technique can be taught to whomever the young man wishes. But if the apprentice is useless, he must never learn, as the old man will take him out if the rule is broken. The boy's gaze shows that he understood the seriousness of his mentor's demand. The old man continues and talks about the second promise, which is to inform him if the young man discovers anything about the goddess. The guy wonders if they will meet again in the labyrinth, and the master confesses he has no hope. However, that mentor reveals that deep down, he still hopes for a miracle to find the lost goddess. The system explains that for ETNZLR to find the goddess, she should not have perished by his side. In other words, the goddess Lebanov must be taken out by someone before ENTZR finds her. The young man thinks if he should tell this information to the master, as it could be a turning point in the story. The adventurer then decides to speak and prepares to reveal important information to his mentor. At this, the guy states he knows the goddess's location, and the old man observes him with wide, astonished eyes. Completely surprised, the old man turns to the young man and asks what he just said. The protagonist then reaffirms that he knows the whereabouts of the goddess Lebaninov to his master. The old man reacts with a disbelieving laugh, stating that it was a bad joke. The traveler explains he has searched for the goddess in the labyrinth for ages without finding any trace. However, the young man acknowledges the master's disbelief but says he has a plan to prove the truth. He assures the mentor that he can be trusted because there is an item linked to the labyrinth in his world. The old man quickly rejects the idea of a complete map, but the guy explains there is one for a specific being. At that moment, the old man seems to have an idea, and his eyes shine with a new hope. The master asks if he has the Flute of Divine Calling in his world, and the young man confirms that he does. The protagonist explains that this item reveals the divine position and was only obtained in the labyrinth. During the guy's speech, an image of a young woman appears, showing a precious horn to her companion. She comments that she went to the 89th floor to get the item, but it has no use for her. The protagonist uses the information, remembering the 78th floor of the library in Secret Room 24. The master recognizes the location of the goddess Lebanov, and a new hope arises in him. With a smile, the mentor remembers the Universal Library, a place he had not yet explored. The teacher hugs the young adventurer and thanks him, saying he had already been rewarded plenty. The old man shows deep gratitude to the hero, stating he has never felt so indebted to anyone. Emotionally, the master declares that the boy has become his benefactor, and that he basically saved him. The protagonist complains about the pain in his shoulder, and the old man apologizes for losing control of his emotions. The old man asks the young man if he plans to go there soon and warns him that it will be a difficult path. The mentor thanks him sincerely once more and states it is difficult to express what he feels in words. The old man thinks about how he could repay the favor to the young man for all his great help. The master then gifts the guy a valuable ring, a relic that increased the user's life. Normally, he wouldn't give this to a newbie, but the master trusts the boy and believes in his potential. The young man promises the mentor that he won't waste time and that he can rest easy. The teacher is happy to hear that, and the guy prepares to leave as the master asks if he is already going. The protagonist doesn't want to delay the journey and thanks the master, saying they will meet again. The old man shouts with joy and says goodbye to the young traveler, saying he will finally find the goddess. The protagonist laughs out loud, feeling the freedom of finally following his destiny. He wonders if the goddess Lebaninov and the master are still alive on his journey. The young man believes it will take a long time to meet them both again. The hero then explores the first floor, and with 25 agility, he defeats the rats. A notification warns that the sole difference between him and the creature is large. With that, he notices that the giant rat on the ground gave no experience or reward. The boosting effect thus stopped due to the large difference, and this left him a bit disappointed. Therefore, his growth on the first floor has ended, and now he must proceed to the second. However, he remembers that there is a special place to visit before advancing. In the labyrinth, there is a secret area called the Hidden Room, with an ancient door. Each floor has such an area, and a great reward awaits whoever discovers it. Inside these places, he can find items like staffs, rings, and attribute potions. However, only one explorer can enter the secret room, so the competition was tough. Thus, he missed many rewards before, but now in solo mode, he can take everything. At that moment, the adventurer wonders if the structure of the labyrinths is the same. Although the map changes with the difficulty, the basic structure and the secret room remain. He finds the secret location of the first floor with an excited smile on his face. The hidden room has a single entrance and, from the inside, looks empty and uninteresting. Many players ignored this area because it seems to have no visible purpose. The young man then touches the wall carefully, looking for any kind of change. If the bricks are normal, he believes that one of them can be activated by touch. This means he needs to do meticulous work and check every single block. He thus begins to pull the bricks from the wall with force, feeling the texture of each one. The actions of pressing, turning, and extracting are the key to unraveling the area's secret. The hero crouches to get a better look at the bricks on the floor, searching for any clue. He continues testing the blocks one by one, and if nothing changes, he moves to the next. This challenge is exciting and much better than having to endure a whole week. At this, the adventurer feels a subtle change in the environment and realizes he is on the right track. By interacting with a brick, his detection proficiency increases by 5%. He is the first to discover the secret room and earns the title of adventurer. The adventurer sees the chest shining in the room. This is the reward for finding the location. The young man thinks it would be easy to get the treasure but suspects a trap. The protagonist then walks slowly through the room with cautious steps, observing the floor. At this, a rat appears on the floor of the room, moving quickly, emitting a high-pitched sound. Suddenly, the adventurer's foot crushes the rat, which struggles for a second. The protagonist picks up the dead rodent by the tail and lifts the inert body. Throwing the rat with force, the young man hurls it to test the path. The explorer's face then reveals surprise as he notices something unexpected ahead. Falling to the ground, the rat's body hits with force and stays in place. An arrow appears out of nowhere and pierces the rodent, activating the secret trap. The adventurer observes the arrow up close and crouches to analyze the trap. Getting up from the floor, the explorer ignores the fallen rat and moves forward through the room. Quickly, the young man reacts and catches a flying arrow, holding the projectile in the air. With his shield, the hero protects himself and considers himself strong enough to handle the challenges. More arrows fall to the floor near him, and he counts 7 projectiles in the area. Arrows come from all sides in the room, but the explorer ignores them with confidence. With that, the protagonist smiles a little and thinks he will collect more arrows. The young warrior maintains a calm expression even with the projectiles flying around. At that moment, the floor of the room begins to glow, showing more activated traps. Quickly, the hero moves and catches 2 more projectiles in the air with great dexterity. He then uses his shield to defend a blow, deflecting another flying arrow. Observing the environment, the explorer comments that the situation is getting difficult. He thinks it would have been a waste to buy arrows since they are coming for free. Holding an arrow, he sees that it causes poison and realizes that nothing is easy. He holds 2 different arrows and notes that one causes paralysis and the other might fail. With attention, the hero listens to the sound of the flying projectiles and assesses the situation. The protagonist then becomes confident again and thinks about going to the first trap. Several arrows fly quickly through the room, showing the intensity of the attack. The adventurer smiles as he holds a bunch of arrows and notices an opening. Finally, he looks at one of the arrows in his hand and wonders if 100 would be enough. He thinks about what comes next and seems ready for the dungeon's main course. At that moment, the protagonist shows attention and delivers a quick blow with his fist. The adventurer considers blocking arrows with the shield, but the place is a labyrinth. Seeing the arrows approaching, the young man knows he needs perfect execution. Quickly, the explorer moves, and 2 arrows graze past him. With dexterity, the hero grabs 2 more flying arrows in his direction. Next, the warrior positions himself, and the 5th arrow flies near him. He steps on the 9th brick, marking the next point of the trap. Thus, many projectiles approach, and he predicts there will be 9 attacks this time. At this, the character activates a breathless attack, gaining 10 seconds of breath. His eyes shine and his vision improves by 2%, making it easier to dodge. As he dodges, he notes the position of the arrows, 3 in front and others to the side. Thinking, the adventurer feels his senses sharpen and gains the sensory enhancement skill. He continues to dodge as many projectiles fall to the ground, with only 8 remaining. In a quick move, the hero catches more arrows, now with 5 left to dodge. The adventurer activates deflection, and a red aura surrounds him to deflect the next blow. Still, an arrow hits him, causing 8 damage, and now 4 projectiles remain. The guy withstands the attack and realizes he has gained room to move with the dodge. He notices that all the remaining arrows are moving to the same place and has an idea. Quickly, the young warrior extends his hand and manages to catch an arrow in the air. At this, the fearless explorer catches the arrow and prepares for the final trap. With a firm step, the character's foot touches the ground, waiting for what comes next. The hero grits his teeth with a determined look, ready to face the threat. According to the pattern, this last stage should launch 10 arrows at once. But to his surprise, 15 projectiles shoot in his direction, leaving him perplexed. The warrior's expression changes to one of concern, and he prepares for the worst. He moves nimbly, dodging another projectile that grazes past him. With so many arrows coming, the guy realizes he won't be able to dodge them all. However, the adventurer notices that the more arrows there are, the more their trajectories intersect. Thinking quickly, the hero is hit by several projectiles and ends up badly injured. The warrior's blood drips onto the floor, forming a small puddle near his foot. At this, a message appears warning that he is bleeding and his vitality is decreasing. The young warrior feels great pain but discovers he has gained the pain reduction ability. With this, he tends to his wounds while realizing that the skill's proficiency is still low. Even injured, the adventurer noticed he can learn from the pain, but doesn't want to get hurt. Getting up, he pulls a lever on the wall to move forward and continue. At that moment, a bright light shines from a chest in front of him, catching his attention. The chest opens, revealing a staff, and he thinks that all the traps have been deactivated. With a look of surprise, the guy realizes that the staff already appears in the box. He then wonders if this difficulty is normal and if the item is really a staff. The system pops up with the Staff of Flames, an item that can sling basic spells like Fireball. Even though the spell is entry level, the weapon's power is high, which makes him rethink the whole game mode. Then it hits him, his progress is so off the charts, it's not even comparable to the folks who've barely made a dent. With that, the adventurer steps into a new area through a broken wall, expecting an easy time. The moment he takes his first step, a fierce creature with glowing eyes and sharp teeth lunges out. Our guy realizes that even with an injured arm, the difference in strength gives him an edge against the huge rat. So, the young man sits down to check out the new skills that just appeared on his interface. He sees two new skills, pain reduction and sensory enhancement, both with low proficiency but ready to be leveled up. The hero finds unyielding willpower, a skill to temporarily ignore injuries. Next up, the magic staff appears with its starting spell, Fireball, which deals damage and causes a burn effect. With that, he gets up and wonders if he's grabbed everything from the first floor, and if it's time to head to the next one. The interface explains that the labyrinth is simple, each floor has a staircase guarded by a boss. So our guy stops in front of a massive door, wondering if this will be a piece of cake, but then he remembers, oh right, this is solo mode. The heavy door swings open with a cloud of purple smoke and a weird rat-like smell fills the air. As he enters, he hears a loud screech and spots a giant shadow appearing right in front of him. A massive rat emerges from the shadows, making terrifying noises as the young man stares it down. The system window shows that a giant rat has appeared. The creature bares its teeth and red eyes. The main character, MMC, holds up his shield and wonders if this is really the strength of a first-floor boss in solo mode. He remembers that this monster was the boss of the 10th floor on easy mode, a place where tons of players got totally wiped out. The beast charges with full force, unleashing a red aura, but our guy isn't surprised by the intensity. Our hero faces off against the giant creature, ready for battle, challenging the enemy with incredible bravery. A seated and injured female player looks terrified as she realizes just how strong the monster truly was. She had used a clever trick, knowing that the boss couldn't leave its room in the dungeon. With that, the girl filled the creature's room with oil and then set it ablaze with a firebomb. The young woman quickly leaps away from the flames as her plan proved to be pretty logical. The MC reflects on the girl's tactic, a nearly flawless strategy for that situation. However, this wasn't the kind of fight the Labyrinth expected from the main player in their solo challenge. The rat attacks furiously, and our guy readies his magic staff to counter the beast's assault. Our hero activates the Fireball spell for a perfect strike, aiming to get a whole lot stronger. The fiery attack slams into the monster, dealing a solid 14 points of damage to the large creature before him. The system announces that the beast is now burning and taking 1 point of damage every 10 seconds. Next, the kid grabs his bow and aims an arrow pulsing with strong purple energy at the enemy. The shot hits the creature, dealing 7 points of damage, but the poison has no effect on it. Thinking about his next move, the adventurer prepares another shot, this time with a vibrant green aura. The creature is paralyzed for 10 seconds, frozen in place until it takes another hit. The hero watches the giant rat glow with a yellow aura and thinks the arrows are definitely worth the price. Then the young warrior grabs more projectiles and gets ready, saying, "Let the real battle begin." With that, a perfect shot hits the monster, dealing 8 damage, and the system informs him that it's now poisoned. Another status effect was successfully applied, set to deal constant damage to the giant beast. The enemy shrieks in pain as multiple arrows stick into its body, and the hero defends himself with his shield. RMC feels like this fight is more like child's play than a real challenge for him. Right after, he attacks with a blue aura, and the system announces the beast is weakened, making the damage more potent. At that moment, the young warrior stares straight ahead, showing all his determination in the fight. However, the giant rat flies into a rage with a strong red aura, and he realizes the limits of his method. The MC looks at the creature and wonders if the monster's health is about to run out. The beast's silhouette looms larger as a person's figure falls, and the injured player despairs. Just then, the system informs him that Berserker mode activates when the beast's health drops to 20%. Other players scream in panic, realizing the paralysis arrows no longer work. The young man realizes he can't run, the creature is way too fast and will catch and defeat him soon. In a flash, the giant rat is completely enraged, and the system confirms it has entered rampage mode. The hero puts on a serious face as the fight enters its second phase, which will be a head-on battle. The monster attacks with fury, slamming one of its claws into the ground with immense force, creating a shockwave. Next, the warrior blocks a blow from the furious rat using his shield, which is surrounded by a red aura. With that, the adventurer takes 8 points of damage and realizes he can't withstand this fight with his current strength. The guy looks up at the creature thinking his strength is too low, so he needs to rely on agility. The MC then deflects the beast's attack with his shield as blue energy radiates from the weapon. The creature falls to the ground, screeching in pain, its red aura still blazing, making it even angrier. The hero leaps onto the enemy attacking from above, and the system reports that 7 points of damage were dealt. At that moment, the monster opens its giant mouth, showing off its enormous teeth, and roars with pure rage. The young man blocks another of the beast's attacks with his shield but takes 5 points of damage as he tries to focus. The adventurer attacks the creature, dealing 7 damage, and his combat endurance increases by 1%. He struggles to hold his shield, realizing he's having trouble breathing, completely out of breath. Determined, the guy attacks the monster up close, using his shield which glows with a direct hit. With that, he activates apnea, giving him 10 seconds of free breathing and deals 8 points of damage. Again, the hero strikes the giant rat, using his shield with all his might, and deals another 7 damage. The guy hits the creature hard and hears a screech as the system registers 24 points of damage. Even so, the adventurer withstands the attack, thinking he can still take a few more hits. The warrior then dodges another brutal attack but suffers 25 points of damage in the process. With that, the young man moves with speed and manages to avoid the next attack, showcasing his agility. The fighter then leaps high above the enemy, preparing to deliver a final blow to the giant creature. Meanwhile, the MC counterattacks with everything he's got, hitting the rat with a precise and powerful strike. The beast takes massive damage, and the adventurer breathes a sigh of relief for a brief moment. The young man then attacks the creature with all his strength, and an intense light erupts from his weapon, striking the enemy. With this charge, he deals 20 points of damage to the giant rat, and the system registers the huge impact. The beast lets out a loud shriek, and the monster's mouth shows signs of injury from the intense blow. Finally, the adventurer stands tall and watches the great rat fall in defeat as a victory notice appears. The hero sighs in relief, wiping away sweat, and realizes the fight was easier than he had imagined. Immediately, several windows pop up, informing him of his gains in agility, mana, and strength. The guy feels like he's in peak physical condition and is satisfied with the results of this battle. He receives more rewards for defeating the boss, including rare potions to boost his attributes. The MC drinks a rare potion, and 2 system messages appear indicating the use of items. At that moment, the hero looks at his gains, noticing his strength has increased by 2 points. His status screen appears, confirming he's at level 4 with 17 strength, 16 intelligence, and 30 agility. His progress is clear: 17 points in strength, 16 in intelligence, and 30 in agility. Sitting down, the warrior thinks that these stats are excellent for the first floor on easy mode. Then, the young adventurer remembers learning a new skill during the battle. A skill window appears, revealing the activation of counterattack, which costs 5 mana. Stretching, the fighter sighs in relief for having checked everything before moving on to the next challenge. Staring into space, the guy ponders something that intrigues him. Thinking about his next step, his hands hover over the system interface, showing the strategy for the first floor on Solo. The MC thinks about a guide posted in the community but doesn't have high hopes for the outcome. Then, the adventurer sees something on the screen that confuses him, and he expresses his surprise with an inch mum. 2 men are talking in front of the screen, one of them fearing the path to the Fountain of Life. A woman says they'll be safe once they reach the spring, and that the journey is an exciting race. 2 other guys laugh, commenting that it's better to take a risk than to go down without trying anything. The hero expresses surprise at seeing messages of support about the Fountain of Life, something new to him. This new world is very different for him. A man attacks a creature and screams about his legs. A sad-looking guy sits on the floor, watching his screen filled with messages of despair, not strategies. A scary shadow with a weapon appears on a wall covered in dark stains. A very dangerous place. Someone sits alone on the floor, asking if anyone else is around, but only Tae-Yan was there. Looking at the screen, the hero wonders where Kang Tae-san is and notices that everything is slowly changing. The young adventurer then climbs the steps towards the light, looking ready for the next phase. The guy questions if they should leave already, and something glows in his hand as he seems deeply focused. A martial artist's gauntlet appears on the screen, increasing attack power by 1 point and helping him hit harder. The adventurer talks to an old man about a weapon art, and the elder asks if he used his fist and knows the master. As the fighter climbs the steps, the old man asks if he's just going to sell meat or if he plans to grab more things. With a smile, the old man says he already knows what this is about, seemingly understanding the whole situation. The young man then faces the elder, who asks if he's looking for a certain blacksmith. The mysterious blacksmith, hey friend, is shown in action, and Tae-Yan mentioned she wouldn't have gotten far without her help. The hero descends the stairs into a dark place where light guides the way, and he needs to go deeper. The MC makes his way through a labyrinth, a place where light barely reaches, but those who get hurt here survive. Because of this, the power in this area doesn't seem that strong, indicating an initial challenge for the young man. The second floor mission then begins. The objective is to defeat the boss to move forward. The reward is a beginner's mana potion plus a secret prize, and the young man thinks the potion is rare. At that moment, several blue screens surround the adventurer, indicating a lot of information to process. He realizes he has several unread notifications and wonders what they could be as names are mentioned. The hero sees many messages from different people, thanking him for helping them reach the Fountain of Life. As the MC tries to sort through the messages, Kang Jun-hyuk asks to speak with him right then. Then, Kang Jun-hyuk appears and jokes, asking if the hero can't talk, and our guy asks what he wants. Smiling, his colleague says he just wanted to make sure their savior was alive, but the other tells him to watch himself. The MC questions if he really took that risk just for a community post. With tears in his eyes, his companion says he had no choice, as everyone was at their limit and needed hope. He continues explaining that without entering the labyrinth, there was no food and the situation was horrible. The guy laments that there was no one to talk to, and the situation was perfect for going insane. Lying on the ground, Kang Jun-hyuk was thinking about running through the labyrinth, but something happened at a critical moment. The adventurer is surprised by the solo mode and the first floor strategy, which was vital for others. His companion then remembers that the young woman Taeyeon was the first to succeed, and many others followed her. He then asks how many people beat the rat hunt, and the MC replies that it was only him and the girl. The guy smiles and says he doesn't know the young woman, but that she must be talented to beat the big rats. His friend then explains that the MC will meet a strange old NPC who is looking for a god. If the player reacts correctly, he'll get something useful, and the NPC will behave differently with him. The comrade asks the hero to let the girl Taeyeon know when she wakes up, and the other asks if he's okay. The young man complains that his colleague is helping him too much, since they're competing, even in the labyrinth. With that, the young man states he may be weaker, could catch up to his friend with so much information, and he won't accept charity. The comrade says our hero is talking nonsense, but the other insists he's dead serious. The older one then asks what kind of competition they should have, since the situation was different. He states that they are all human and facing the same threat of the planet's imminent destruction. The reason for sharing information is simple. He doesn't want his friend to get lost in dangerous places. The hero questions if his colleague knows how many people have been taken out following the strategy and doubts he'll catch up. At that, his comrade laughs, saying the guy hasn't even passed the first floor and should just do his best. The hero's feet advance across a virtual floor, preparing for what lies ahead on his journey. The young man then remembers that time as a dark figure appears behind him. His companion asks about the community and finds out it's running as usual with other players. Suddenly, a green monster with sharp teeth bursts out of the wall, startling everyone with its appearance. The adventurer shows his irritation with the situation and yells that none of this makes any sense to him. The young man then finds himself surrounded by small enemies while reading something on the floor, showcasing his skill. With that, two larger goblins charge forward, screaming in his direction, ready for devastating attack. Despite the imminent threat, the MC's face remains calm and observant amidst the smoke. Suddenly, the fighter's eye glows with a golden light, indicating the awakening of a new power. One of the monsters notices a longsword appearing and is surprised by the hero's new item. With his new weapon in hand, the adventurer faces his opponents and challenges them to bring it on. At that moment, the MC swings the sword, creating a trail of golden energy, ready for the strike. The attack hits the target with a massive explosion of light and debris, destroying the surrounding structure. A rusty sword then appears on the screen, indicating 2 points of attack and that it could be useful. Finally, the hero holds the sword in a wooden shield, pleased with his new combination of items. A door appears in the darkness with a bright light emanating from it, making a very strange sound. The hero's eyes suddenly glow with an intense purple hue, indicating a new perception. The guy looks shocked by what he sees ahead, his eyes still shining a strong purple. He finds a red altar and, with it, gains a bonus to intelligence and more mana points. The image reveals the gods of the labyrinth, who can be either friends or foes to the players. The young man remembers that most gods see humans as playthings and Rakuritis is a god of demise. The adventurer faces the large skeletal figure, which appears to be a very powerful deity. A heavy, dark power can be felt coming from that altar of Rakuritis, a portal to an entity. The fighter understands why the so-called Li Taeyeon fled upon seeing something as terrifying as that. Surrounded by a red aura, he wonders if this is the power of a real divine being. A new quest appears. Rakuritis wants to test the explorer, who accepts the trial for a reward. The young man smiles and accepts the challenge, showing he has no fear of the dangerous situation. Thus, the side quest begins and Rakuritis is pleased with his decision as the red energy intensifies. An armored hand begins to form in the reddish light, signaling the start of a new phase. Next, an armored leg also appears, made of that mystical energy, showing the transformation. The massive red energy spins forcefully in the air, very close to the young warrior who watches it all. Then, an armored head emerges with glowing red eyes, completing the enemy's new form. The false servant of Reikiradis is complete, and the mission now is to defeat this armored creature. The adventurer observes the creature, thinking that there are no visible openings in the opponent's armor. He realizes that the armored opponent seems incredibly strong and resistant to attacks. The enemy then lifts its foot in a threatening pose, ready to deliver a powerful attack. The armored warrior attacks with a heavy sword strike, and the guy tries to defend himself with his shield. The defender feels a massive impact, taking 25 points of damage even with the shield's defense. He understands that using the shield won't do much against the absurd strength of that opponent. With that, the challenger draws a second sword, revealing that he will now use 2 blades in the fight. The young man thinks that it's been a long time since he last needed to use 2 swords at once. The MC then leaps towards the false servant with truly impressive agility. In midair, he spins both blades, attacking the enemy with full force and incredible speed. The fighter aims his strikes at the few openings he can find in the enemy's armor. The guy's swords clash with the armored warriors, creating a brilliant flash of light. The warrior then realizes that his blow didn't make the armored opponent move one bit. Faced with this, the young man thinks that the enemy is much stronger and that fighting head-on like this is useless. The guy then positions himself for a new, different move, already thinking about his next strategy. He kicks the ground hard to propel himself towards the opponent with all his strength. Meanwhile, the adventurer nimbly runs towards the warrior, attacking quickly with his swords. The young man approves of his own speed and strategy during the attack, thinking he's doing well. He attacks the opponent with his dual blades at high speed, delivering several strikes. With this, the MC realizes he is faster than the false servant, surpassing its speed. The guy's strikes deal 6 points of damage with each hit on the armored enemy, who seems invincible. Although the hero's blade gets stuck in the opponent's armor, he decides it doesn't matter. The young man then punches the chest of Reikiradis' false servant, dealing an additional 4 points of damage. Meanwhile, the fighter remembers an aeration weapon technique to use at the right moment. The guy gets closer to prevent the opponent from using its full strength in close combat. The MC then backs away from the enemy, thinking it was easier than he expected. However, he thinks the floor balanced the fight because Reikiradis only wanted to test his skills. The hero notices the arena changing and understands that the god's domain has shrunk. With that, the servant regains its intelligence and gets all of its abilities back. The guy is shocked by the situation and wonders what just happened there. The armored warrior then raises his sword, ready to attack the MC. The knight's helmet shines brightly, showing its great aura of power. A message appears for the hero, warning him he has encountered a servant of Reikiradis. The MC looks to the side, thoughtfully evaluating the combat situation. The armored enemy displays a powerful red aura around its body. The warrior draws the sword from his back and prepares for the clash against the young man. The knight wields his weapon and prepares for a very powerful attack. The young man dodges the opponent's sword strike while preparing his defense. The hero notices that the false label is gone and the opponent's aura has changed. The MC then prepares for the next move, holding his swords. He thinks that his previous tactic will no longer work because the enemy is now intelligent. The guy blocks the opponent's powerful attack using his dual swords. The enemy's helmet glows with a powerful reddish aura, indicating its power. The hero defends against the blow using his dual swords and dodging the charge. He takes 13 and 11 damage and is shocked because the opponent's movements have changed. The armored warrior leaps for a powerful overhead attack against the young fighter. A precise attack hits the guy dead on, dealing 25 damage, and he screams. His face shows the pain of the blow and also surprise at how strong the attack was. Wounded, he recognizes that it was a strike from a well-trained swordsman, something he's never seen before. The servant seems to have complete control and can manipulate its weapon perfectly. The hero analyzes his sword, which glows as he processes the new information. Thoughtfully, the young man touches his lips, and an idea comes to him. He wants to learn the technique. The knight, with a blue aura, reveals the nature of the labyrinth and its abilities. He raises his eyes to a vision of giant, floating eyes with a blue aura. With a determined look, the MC reaffirms his desire to master the skills. He approaches and admits that the opponent is superior and that he wants to learn. The hero smiles, remembering he's a player, and the sword alone won't grant him victory. A bolt of fire launches with full force towards the young man, ready for the confrontation. The armored warrior's sword gleams, and he prepares for a powerful attack. The armored knight stands atop the wreckage, surveying the battlefield. At that, the MC's gaze sharpens, showing his determination. The young hero appears in a leap and strikes the servant, announcing his presence. A blue aura forms around him, and he deals 6 points of damage to the enemy. With the impact, the opponent feels the guy's blow as he continues his assault. The armored warrior faces the opponent's glowing dual swords. The god servant tells him to give up, as his efforts are useless. Activating his skill, the young man energizes his sword, making the next blow special. The attack hits the enemy, who takes 15 damage and shows surprise. He then activates Breathless Attack and prepares for another charge. Rapid strikes hit the knight, dealing 6, 5, and 6 points of damage. Attacking relentlessly, the hero gains the consecutive attack skill and celebrates. The servant suffers 13 damage and is hit by a burn on the final blow. The fighter thinks about how to defeat the enemy, since his mana is low. But the armored warrior knows that retreating now will be very difficult for him. The hero's expression becomes serious as he has nothing to lose. The MC then jumps with everything he has towards the opponent with an intense blue aura. His dual swords are ready for a new strike on the falling enemy. The knight's face shows surprise and pain from the young man's attack. He then strikes the servant, who becomes enveloped in a strong red aura. The fighter's sword glows with red energy, showing its power. The guy takes 80 damage and winces in pain from the enemy's attack. However, he activates the Endure skill, and the fatal attack is nullified. Immediately, the guy attacks the warrior, and all damage is reduced to 0. The MC's blow lands squarely on the opponent's armor with full force. The young man lets out a powerful shout and attacks with determination on his face. Another strong impact hits the knight's body with the hero's blue energy. The armored knight begins to dissolve after the young champion's blows. The warrior is on his knees, panting and exhausted after the difficult battle. The defeated knight floats with a smile and says goodbye, acknowledging his bravery. The hero sees a system message congratulating him on his victory against the servant. The guy looks at the sky and the system says the god is pleased. He then collapses from exhaustion. The champion then complains angrily on the ground, saying the mission was unfair. With that, his body glows and system messages show his evolution and strengths. Curious, he asks how much power he gained and asks to see his new attributes. The window opens, showing Kang Tae-san at level 6 with an increase in his stats. The fighter waits for items, but the system says he will be rewarded soon. But he scoffs at the reward. Since the enemy almost took him out in the fight, suddenly a pink aura envelops him, and the system announces a ceremonial sword. The god's ceremonial sword appears, a red weapon stained with the blood of sacrifices. The guy can't believe what he's seeing and wonders if he can receive something so powerful. The system says he passed the test and will receive another reward for his effort. A new passive skill emerges for the hero called Evidence of a Fight. The Evidence of a Fight skill strengthens the young man with a 1% mastery boost. The fighter wonders if the skill accelerates muscle growth and thinks about divine power. The guy then floats in a destroyed location and wonders if that was the end. His face shows surprise and he seems confused about the next steps. His violet eyes glow with a pinkish hue and the aura is still present. A message appears. Rakaratus offers an apostle contract and the warrior wonders about it. The MC stares at the screen and questions the meaning of the apostle contract. Without further explanation, the hero backs away and wonders if he should choose quickly. He sits down thoughtfully and stares at the options to accept or decline the contract. If he accepts, the god's influence would be reduced, and the warrior reflects on this. The gods suffer penalties and Rakaratus wants an apostle despite the costs. Even though it's a favor, the other party is a massive, terrifying god. He's been manipulated before, and accepting the offer could turn him into a puppet. The young man could be used as a toy or a slave for his entire life and needs to refuse. His fist then moves decisively towards the decline button. A message appears confirming the young man's refusal of the apostle contract. The guy feels relieved because the god didn't get angry and a new mission is shown. Even so, he refuses again because he doesn't trust someone who has already hurt him. Thus, the sub-mission is declined and the notice on the screen slowly fades. The reward says that Rakaratus will decide based on his performance. With that, the young man accepts the mission, thinking that not all of them can be improved. Rakaratus, seen amused by the MC's choice as his dark face appears. The god's red and dark energy fills the environment, appearing powerful. The hero arrives at a dark shop and sees an old man with a white beard at the counter. The old man asks why he's there, and the guy says he wants to buy something. He then asks if those are potions, and the merchant confirms that he will need some of them. With the sword in his hand, he thinks that he didn't want to stay on the lower floors, but the trials would be a huge problem. The young man's blade then glows red, and the shop owner is surprised to notice the weapon. His violet eyes shine brightly, and the power of the red aura becomes much more evident. The old merchant questions if the sword came from Rakaratus, and says that the god has become obsessed with the guy. He then confirms he knows Rakaratus and says he knows everything that happens around there. This merchant reveals that many have perished because of that crazy deity's customs. He expresses his anger at how this god diminishes the territory of other warriors. The MC wonders if the deity's actions have been happening for a long time and reflects on it. The guy then takes the opportunity to ask the old merchant another question. He asks if the shopkeeper knows what an apostle contract for a god is. The old merchant is very surprised by the young hero's question. At that moment, he wants to know if Rakaratus offered such a contract to the boy. The old man's face reveals a certain shock upon hearing about the powerful deity. The MC confirms that he put the offer on hold due to a lack of a clear explanation from the divine being. The old shopkeeper replies that this was the right choice, as it's not an easy decision to make. He agrees that such an important decision needs a lot of details to be accepted. The old merchant's eyes look serious, and he comments on the god's contract. He reveals that the said deity has made this kind of offer many times before. The man's expression seems to indicate a dark past related to divine contracts. The merchant reports that he couldn't stop the powerful attack, and his body completely froze at that moment. The guy comments that he also tried to move but couldn't react to what happened. The man says he approached the being but was rejected because the god said he had no value. The hero wonders if only those who react to the attacks are worthy, and if the divine being and the dwarves think alike. The young man asks where the two are now, and his friend replies that he was hunting a big rat. The girl also wants to level up, even though she's on the lowest floor, and attacks a monster. The adventurer asks about the others, and his colleague says that some are hunting the big rat, but it takes time. The MC says he can calmly tell them about the second floor information later. The hero then focuses his attention to explain something important to his friends right now. The two listeners seem very attentive and focused on their companion's words at that moment. The young man describes a boss monster on the second floor that is an enhanced and very strong giant rat. The creature has physical strength above 2,000, and he warns them to be careful with its attack. The friend asks how to capture the monster, and the MC tells them to think of a way out. He asks them to warn other players not to enter the red door unprepared, or they will be taken out. The girl thanks him, and the companion promises to do his best. As the hero prepares for the sub-mission, the adventurer runs along a path, wielding his glowing dagger and a wooden shield. Suddenly, he jumps over a large, green enemy that reacts with a loud growl. Leaping from a high area, the young man prepares to strike another greenish creature down below. At that moment, the MC lands in the middle of many green monsters, and an intense glow surrounds him. The adventurer focuses on the dagger in his hand, thinking about using his new combat skill. His technique activates quickly, and rays of light strike the monsters approaching him. He then strikes one of the green beings with full force, hitting the creature's mouth without hesitation. His eyes glow purple, and he feels his mind clear as fatigue lessens and his attributes improve. Furthermore, he realizes there are no limits or restrictions and wonders if he can fight non-stop. This power is incredible, and depending on the situation, could become a main skill in battles. Meanwhile, the energy rays continue to hit the monsters, which explode in green splatters. A large green monster is knocked to the ground with impact marks and slowly disappears. Looking around, the explorer sees several defeated monsters and thinks about what happened there. Suddenly, the warrior notices a different door with 2 swords and wonders if it was there before. Curious, the guy approaches and peeks through the door, seeing a new environment beyond it. The explorer sees a strange tombstone in the new place, wonders what it is, and a message appears. The screen then shows that he has found the tomb of a brave warrior. As he looks attentively, his eyes glow purple, and a new message confirms the discovery. Standing in front of the tomb, the adventurer receives a bonus for being the first to discover the location. With curiosity, the MC extends his hand and touches the surface of the tombstone without hesitation. Suddenly, a strong burst of light erupts from the tombstone, and the explorer steps back in surprise. Soon after, a small ghost-like creature appears out of nowhere and greets the young adventurer. The hero's eyes widen, showing his great surprise at the unexpected appearance. The small creature says, "You," and "goodbye," and starts floating away from the tomb without any explanation. Faced with this, the MC is completely confused and doesn't understand what really happened. He quickly extends his hand again as if trying to reach the disappearing creature. Then a second ghost appears saying, "Goodbye," and the original being seems to fall back into the tombstone. With this strange situation, the warrior becomes visibly annoyed with the small being's games. The ghost creature is now back on the tombstone and asks what the young man was doing. The MC then grabs the being tightly and angrily says he had told it to go away. The adventurer holds the ghost by its scarf and demands that it stop playing around and give him the quest. The indignant ghost asks how someone can just demand a quest and who the hero thinks he is. The specter says that it's easy now with the system telling them everything and complains that they don't have to risk their lives. The little ghost confirms that they also had a system, and the adventurer is very surprised. Thinking the MC wonders who this being is, as it's very different from the NPCs he's seen before. The specter tells the hero to shut up, and the young man questions if it's the quest or just an object. The ghostly being then agrees and reveals it's a restless soul bound there to give quests. However, the ghost warns that it can't give the quest to weaklings, and the adventurer questions why. Furious, the specter complains that the labyrinth left it there, when it should have been on deeper floors. Thinking, the explorer realizes he was mistaken and concludes that the being is just a useless NPC. The adventurer walks away from the tombstone, and the ghost says goodbye but seems surprised, calling out to the hero. Up close, the ghostly being's face shows enormous surprise at what it sees. The adventurer's weapon begins to glow brightly, and the specter asks him to wait because it saw something. The ghost asks if the weapon doesn't belong to Rakuratus and wants to know why the hero has it. The ghostly being is shocked, asking if he passed the test of that unpredictable guy. The excited specter hugs the adventurer's face and announces that it has changed its mind and will give him the quest. The animated being says the young man should have said earlier that he deserved the quest and calls him closer. The hero replies that he doesn't want to hear it, but the specter insists, asking him to pay attention. The ghost reveals that it was a powerful warrior who reached the deepest floor of the labyrinth. The specter reveals it faced a strong enemy and then returned to the 10th floor to rest. It was low on energy, but the weak monsters couldn't hurt it, and it ended up falling asleep there. A hand with a glowing dagger appears over the warrior's sleeping body, ready to strike. And the leader of the 10th floor used that weapon to end the warrior's life while he slept. Filled with rage, the spectral being shouts that it was defeated by a low life, even though it was the conqueror. The MC listens to the ghost's story, thinking about what it just told him about its past. The specter then says it will give the hero a quest, asking him to defeat the boss of the 10th floor. The quest of the fallen warrior seeking revenge appears, and the condition is to defeat the 10th floor boss. The explorer reads the message and questions how the prize depends on the being's mood, but accepts anyway. The adventurer then wonders if it's a quest chain and confirms that he accepts the challenge. The warrior starts to walk away from where the spectral being was, leaving the place behind. The little ghost moves quickly, keeping up with the young adventurer's steps in a hurry. The hero covers his face with his hand and thinks while the little specter talks nonstop about the tome. The MC expresses his displeasure at having to stick with the noisy creature until the 10th floor. With that, the little spirit starts spinning in the air and asks where his enemy's weapon came from. Running away, the young explorer asks the being to stop talking, but the spirit reminds him of the quest. With that, the hero turns around and says the ghost doesn't need to tell its story, but it decides to talk anyway. The creature changes its mind and reveals it was royalty from the Carvert Empire, a fearless and wise leader. Next, we see its former self sitting on a throne, as it was the eldest son and heir to the empire. Wielding his sword, the spirit says he was the best in swordsmanship and intelligence, and all the ladies admired him. The specter then recalls the glory of its happy past, while the young man thinks he looks like a thug. In an image, we see the being in its human form being struck down as its world fell. It tried to save everyone but failed. The little being says it perished in its sleep on a lower floor of the dungeon, and the MC calls it a sorry fool. Consumed by rage, the furious specter reveals that one mistake ruined everything, and that it needs to eliminate its killer to soothe its wrath. Arriving at a wooden door, the young man explores the area, but the annoyed ghost asks if he didn't hear its story. The explorer glances sideways at the creature, which complains that today's adventurers have no morals or respect. Arriving at the location, the guy finds 4 goblins in his path, and his menacing shadow appears on the ground. The explorer then shoots an arrow full of energy towards the monsters, showing his precision. The hero quickly prepares to attack, and with his sword in hand he strikes one of the creatures. The adventurer's attack hits the goblin, and the screen indicates 10 points of damage to the monster. With his sword in hand, the young man faces the remaining goblins, while the little floating specter watches him. The goblins run towards the MC, preparing for combat, showing their weapons and shields. The little floating ghost questions the guy's strategy of always using paralyzing arrows on the same goblin. Asking if he was farming a skill, the spirit sees the adventurer holding the injured goblin, and he confirms it. However, the spectral being disagrees, saying it's not possible to gain a skill like that, but the young man insists it is. His eyes glow purple, revealing a strong determination in the MC's gaze. The spirit asks the young man which floor he reached, and the explorer reveals he is on the 85th. With that, the adventurer proposes a bet to the ghost and says that if he can't get the skill, the spirit can control him. The spectral being makes its part of the bet, asking that if it wins, the young man must answer its questions without lying. The ghost then accepts the bet, revealing its name, Alkalite of the Great Carvert Empire, and guarantees it will answer without lies. The little spirit shouts that if it wins, the young man will be its slave, and the explorer, with a confident smile, accepts the challenge. Alkalite laughs loudly, very satisfied with the outcome of the bet, as golden sparkles surround it. At that, the spectral being orders the guy to obey him on his knees and address him with honor, and the MC accepts the condition. The little ghost then thinks about what else it will do with the hero and amuses itself imagining how much it can take advantage of him. Meanwhile, the little floating creature tells the adventurer to give up and asks if he knows the duel skill. The guardian then details duel, a common skill where no one can interfere in the fight between 2 opponents. The explorer claims he will get something similar, but the little spectral being thinks the idea is absurd. The MC faced a single enemy while dealing with several at the same time, a very complicated act. The adventurer smiles victoriously and obtains the special skill Force Duel, and the floating creature is surprised. Completely shocked, the floating spirit's jaw drops, not believing what just happened. The new skill costs 10 mana, lasts for 10 seconds, and prevents damage from other opponents, in addition to blocking negative effects. The spectral being can hardly believe it, asking how the guy obtained such a rare skill that no one else should have. The adventurer turns his head, and the little creature still wonders what the hero has been doing to get so many skills. The MC then smiles confidently and reminds the spirit of the bet they made minutes before. The little creature crosses its arms and admits the bet but soon gets annoyed, warning the young man not to be arrogant. Calmly, the adventurer asks what the spirit is talking about and asks it to answer his questions correctly. The spectral being gets extremely angry with the adventurer and curses him out at that moment. The little spirit then asks if the young man knows the jump skill, and the guy says yes, but it wonders why it's not Grand Jump. The young man then asks the spirit what Grand Jump is, and the little ghost is surprised he doesn't know the skill, and then looks at a door. The spirit accepts that the adventurer understands some things but says what's important is to survive and what he discovers in the labyrinth. The explorer continues to check the wall with light punches, and the little ghost questions if he's looking for a secret room, while the boy tries very hard. The adventurer's gaze is highly focused, and an energy emanates from his right eye as the young man feels something different in the wall. Suddenly, a bright light comes out of the wall, and a notice shows that the guy had a powerful premonition about the place. The MC starts to pull a brick from the wall, and the little floating creature watches him, shocked by the scene. The little spirit's jaw drops, not understanding what is happening, and its whole body shakes. The young man now obtains a detection skill and learns about its proficiency in warnings, and the spirit wonders how he got it. The hero looks at a hallway full of spears on the ceiling and wonders if this is another goblin trap. The little guardian comments that it's a random trap and that it will be difficult to pass, suggesting the adventurer give up. The first trap is the one with sharp-tipped arrows ready to fall, and the danger is clearly visible. The second trap is a sinking floor, where the adventurer could fall into an abyss. The hero's gaze shows his determination to proceed, and he doesn't seem to fear the dangers. The hallway reveals one more trap. The last one is a moving wall heading towards the explorer, with a chest at the end. The little floating creature explains that this trap is the same as the one in the easiest mode, so he can pass through it easily. Meanwhile, the young adventurer prepares to act, crouching with a blue energy surrounding his body. The MC's gaze shows great focus, and his serious expression indicates that he is ready for battle. The little ghost is startled to see an explosion of blue energy coming from where the guy was. He activates a skill with his hands, and his arm and weapon glow in shades of red and purple with strong energy. At that moment, the young hero attacks the first trap of sharp spears with a very powerful blue energy. The little spectral guardian is still shocked, and its face shows confusion with what it just saw and felt. The adventurer then runs quickly down the hallway, dodging the spears that were still falling on that path. The explorer's gaze remains calm and steady, showing that he has complete control over the situation. His fist is now charged with blue energy again, ready for a new attack against whatever comes his way. He throws a powerful punch forward, releasing a wave of bright and intense blue energy. The young man's face shows great determination as he unleashes the force of his fist with vigor. The little floating creature is completely shocked, its jaw agape, not believing the adventurer's power. The hero explains that the wall doesn't belong to the labyrinth but to the goblins, which is why it's so weak and easy to destroy. The adventurer opens the chest with the destroyed wall, and the little being asks for silence. The young man then finds a ring with +5 mana and comments that it came just in time. The little floating ghost then asks who he is, and the guy is a bit surprised. The hero wonders if the creature would understand if he said he was a regressor. The confused creature then questions what a regressor is, but the adventurer tells it to forget it. The little guardian thinks he knows nothing, and the MC remembers the bazaar. With that, the young man realizes that 10 days have passed in the labyrinth, and the being gets irritated. Elsewhere, 3 explorers debate how to catch a giant rat, and one of them says to work hard. At that moment, another adventurer asks how Junhook got it right, and he says it's nothing special. The MC then says it's almost time and talks about a community to the confused being. Suddenly, the hero appears to the community, and the other explorers are surprised to see him. Junhook questions why Tazen contacted everyone, and the young man says it's time to explain. The adventurer explains that the situation is under control, and that half of the hunters were successful. He then asks about the pair of friends who fled the boss after a single attack. The young woman explains that she needed another way because her strength wasn't enough, and the hero praises her plan. The adventurer then explains the reason for gathering everyone at that location at that moment. The dark-haired guy declares that he came to teach skills to the solo players. An explorer asks why this is happening now, and the young man explains that it's the best time. For the blue-haired girl, the skills wouldn't be understood by those who have just arrived in the labyrinth. The community leader announces that he will explain everything and asks everyone to listen carefully. The explorers buzz with excitement, and one of them thanks Mr. Tazen very much for the help. The young man tells them to save their thanks for after they've heard the whole explanation. The MC then announces the first skill to be taught, pain reduction. The hero then demonstrates how to do it and asks them to push a sword into their own arm all the way. The instructor informs them that they can use a rusty sword to insert into their forearm. The participants are scared, asking about the bones, and seem horrified by the idea. The group questions if he is really telling them to stab themselves, but the mentor says there is a fountain of life there. The adventurer adds that fighting the giant rat this way grants the unyielding willpower skill. A hunter stabs himself, and the others are shocked, wondering if the next skills will be like this. The speaker states that he will continue to explain and that the next skill is called apnea. The adventurer explains that apnea gives his sword more striking power when he pushes it to the limit. We then see a participant submerged in water, training that very same skill. Seeing this, 2 explorers get spooked, thinking the training methods are a straight-up death wish. Meanwhile, a young man is getting pummeled by a giant rat to level up his resistance. He needs to endure 30 hits from the creature to finally master the technique. This makes the newbies wonder if these dangerous methods are really necessary. The community leader states he has no intention of forcing anyone to learn this way. He then says the decision to try or not is now up to each of them. The mentor understands their reaction as they come from modern, calmer times. For these folks, war and famine were just stories from a distant past. The beginners had never risked their lives, and their mindset wasn't going to change that easily. A female explorer asks the leader if there isn't an easier way to get the skills, but he replies with a serious look that, unfortunately, there's no other way. Surprised, the participants accept they have no choice and decide to try the techniques. The speaker, Taizan, smiles and asks if they want to start with the safest skill. 3 young folks look shocked by the decision, wondering if they're really going to do this. The mentor then smiles and encourages one of the guys to work hard to secure new powers. An irritated companion comments that the labyrinth is where those fated to fall eventually do. Even so, the leader scolds him, believing that some can indeed survive the challenge. Then, the man and his companion arrive at a set of red doors to face the local boss. The little creature questions if this is it, and if he wasn't going to ask for info on the boss. Opening the doors, the leader surprises his partner by saying he didn't need that. With a confident smile, the MC declares it's time to start the fight. Finally, a club-wielding goblin and a guardian appear, ready for combat. The Horde's chief shows off his giant weapon in a terrifying glare, ready for a brawl. Meanwhile, the smaller monster lunges forward fiercely, mouth wide open for an attack. The protagonist blocks the enemy strike with his sword, showing off some serious agility. Taizan then propels himself with a skill but realizes it's not the right time. The small mascot shows great concern over his friend's impulsive move. The larger monster with glowing eyes prepares to attack using its full strength. His companion warns him of the strategy, but the hero says he's already figured it all out. With a steady gaze, the young man comments that his course of action is the best option right now. At that moment, a purple energy envelops the adventurer, and a large goblin appears on top. With his eyes narrowed, the young man concentrates, and the purple aura around him intensifies. His eye then shines intensely with a strong purplish hue. Suddenly, the hero finds himself in a dark, macabre place surrounded by skeletons. A nasty hand then extends from the ground amidst numerous scattered skulls. Several spirits blame him for their demise, saying he chose the easy way out. The young man hears the accusations, looking shocked by all the blame thrown at him. The voices continue their assault, calling him a useless good for nothing. He lifts his head, but the spirits keep calling him trash who only knows how to eat. Just then, an injured female figure appears and calls him by his name. With a perplexed look, he wonders why that person didn't come to him. His eye then ends up reflecting all the pain and suffering of that moment. The woman then cries and questions why he left her to perish alone in that place. The female figure floats in a bright glow amidst the darkness and skeletons. With that, the protagonist raises his gaze, still enveloped by the skeletal hands. He is then covered by the ghostly hands, seemingly being consumed by them. In that instant, his eyes shine intensely with a purple tone, showing his focus. The young man then smiles confidently and tells the nasty hands to stop messing with him. At this, the mascot seems annoyed and lets out a sound of clear disapproval. The hero breaks free from the bonds, floating in purple energy, as his companion questions him. Meanwhile, the goblin on top, holding a staff of energy, asks about vengeance. The monster points the luminous staff in the protagonist's direction, ready to strike. The main character tells it to stop again, his voice firm. His purplish eye glows with pure determination, staring down the adversary before him. Suddenly, he uses a weapon and defends himself with the power of the indomitable spirit. This surprises the mascot, who questions how the guy withstood all of that. The goblin is seen fallen on the ground while the protagonist faces it with his weapon. The warrior's gaze becomes resolute and filled with power for whatever comes next. With that, the staff-wielding monster activates its madness, attacking the hero in a bid for victory. However, the young man defends himself with his power and says the attack won't reach him. The goblin senses defeat and lets out a sound of pain as its magic fails. Even with the failed attack, the opponent casts a curse against the young man. At this, the creature is on the ground, defeated, and the main character faces it victoriously. Then, the protagonist grabs the monster by the neck after resisting the mental magic. The young man acquires spiritual and magical resistance skills, bidding farewell to his enemy. The mascot is amazed that he resisted mental magic with just normal resistance. The adventurer continues on his way amidst the purple energy, showing his strength. The specter wonders who he is, being so crazy and hard to control. Afterwards, the warrior gets a potion that increases his mana by 10 points. Additionally, he acquires a secret tool for traps and locks. Soon, the mascot complains that he cleared the second floor, but the hero doesn't care. The protagonist heads to the third floor, where a new mission awaits him. Arriving there, an older man appears, surprised to see the adventurer. With that, the old man argues with the mascot, calling him a noisy loser. The young man breaks up the fight and threatens to attack the old man just to see him lose it. The main character gets serious, and the specter says he's already gone, and nothing can get worse. After that, the old man Taizan smokes a pipe, and the ghost is surprised by the items. The hero then tells the man to stop talking and pay attention to what he brought. The old man and his ghostly companion are shocked by the huge amount of items. With that, the protagonist tries on gloves that increase his attack by 2 points. Next, the warrior holds a bronze shield that adds to both attack and defense. The young adventurer looks happy, stating that everything seems amazing. Besides that, he shows off rings and an item called Kalu that increases damage. The spirit and the old man are astonished by the young warrior's great feats. The main character tells the two to stop fighting because he's already leaving. As the guy walks away, his mascot asks why there's so much bad blood between them. The spirit warns the young man to be careful with the old man, as he only helps for his own gain. The old man Tazen looks serious and tells the ghost that the kid is their enemy. The adventurer reflects on the man's words and decides to act based on them. The hero then turns and faces a giant shadowy creature with his sword in hand. Just then, several green goblins scream in pain as they are hit by a powerful attack. The protagonist shows a complete lack of interest in the situation as lights float around. A green beast's face is hit by a powerful blue energy attack. This startles two goblins who are baffled by the force of the blow. Meanwhile, the guy knocks a large creature to the ground, which lets out a cry of pain. The young warrior sits down bored, with his mascot complaining about this dull floor. At that moment, a massive explosion occurs, destroying everything nearby. The mascot remembers how dangerous the place was, with mental attacks that almost did him in. He compares the clear times and finds the third floor easier than the second. Next, the adventurer moves forward, his footsteps echoing on the dungeon floor. The little creature asks why he's offing monsters without gaining XP, and the young man reveals he has a quest. His determined look shows the guy's total focus on what needs to be done. With his sword glowing, the hero explains the quest is to annihilate all monsters on floors 2 and 3. Shortly after, the warrior analyzes his system screen, looking at important information. He's surprised by a new quest revealed by the system. The small mascot is shocked to hear about the apostle's contract. The little critter then realizes the protagonist already knew about this mysterious contract. The guide prepares to explain the situation, and the warrior is very surprised. The floating companion reveals that he has already passed on but has access to all information. He begins his explanation by saying that gods look after different areas and domains. The young man asks if there are gods here and learns about the labyrinth's creation. The protagonist reflects on the new information from the guide about the place's design. The mascot points to the system window and reveals that the labyrinth was created by a sorcerer. But the sorcerer couldn't create the place alone, so he sought help from other beings. He asked for help to challenge knights and heroes willing to risk their lives. The adventurer thinks about the mage's idea and realizes the deities must have really liked it. The guide corrects the hero, explaining that the gods actually loved the idea. The deities then planned and created the labyrinth together, forming the foundation of the place. Anyone who enters the labyrinth will have their worth measured, and the system will offer a contract to the best one. The adventurer wants to know the downside, and the guide explains that his spirit will belong to the god. The little critter then reveals that there are several gods in the labyrinth, and that Rakan has many enemies. The explorer is surprised, realizing he'll have to obey the deities' orders even if they make no sense. The warrior thinks about quitting but finds out that the winner of the labyrinth gets one wish. He wonders if winning means completing everything and remembers that Li Taeyan didn't get her wish granted. The hero wonders if her wish was Ouroboros, and that maybe she should have wished to go back in time. The protagonist scratches his head. There's been a lot of weird stuff happening from the start. After piecing together the guide's stories, the adventurer understands that people are seeking to fulfill their desires. The guy's gaze turns to Earth, and he wonders about the people from his world. He lets out a sigh, realizing there are still many unknown things on his journey. The hero asks if they should go, and the mascot agrees to take a quick look before they head down. A message confirms the removal of a trap, and the warrior wonders if it worked. The system informs him that he obtained the trap removal skill with a low mana cost. He's surprised to have gotten it in just 10 attempts, as he expected to need 100. The adventurer tries to disarm a trap, but the system shows he failed on the first try. The mascot gets irritated, complaining that the young man is wasting time on detection skills. The little companion says leveling up this skill won't make a difference, but the hero doesn't quite get it. Next, they spot a large circular and illuminated room with a spiral staircase. The mascot realizes that to beat the unknown, it's better to have many options on hand. The explorer decides to grab everything he can, and his removal skill goes up by 1%. The guide then watches the adventurer, who seems thoughtful while looking at the floor. The little critter remembers the girl who fell into a trap and suffered because she couldn't disable it. The hero celebrates as a ring appears on his hand, granting 3 more points of strength from the secret room. The young warrior stands among the fallen goblins and wonders what's left for him. The cheerful mascot asks his boss if they should move on right after the battle. The adventurer approaches a red door from which a mysterious smoke is emerging. His little friend asks if he knows what awaits them, and the guy confirms he already knows everything. On the walls are drawings of goblins fighting, and others worshipping something in a kind of ritual. Suddenly, the protagonist and his friend fall through a hole towards a new area. The hero seems pensive, and his companion beside him states the obvious without hesitation. A huge monster with sharp teeth appears, letting out a terrifying and hungry roar. The green creature has a robust body with an intense greenish glow in its center. Then, the great leader of the goblins appears, looking very ticked off about everything. The young man's guide is surprised and says the enemy knows about the other goblins' defeat. The goblin leader starts charging a skill, and the system announces he is activating Wave. In an instant, the adventurer dodges as the monster tries to attack him with its arm. Meanwhile, the young warrior prepares a powerful blow, his fist glowing yellow. The protagonist activates a purple magic and asks if the monster thinks it's the only one with a club. With the magic, the hero causes confusion in the goblin leader. which starts to be processed slowly. The enemy seems dazed and shakes its head as the purple confusion energy envelops it. Seizing the chance, the guy attacks the monster, dealing 21 points of damage on the spot. Suddenly, the goblin chief shakes its head, and the system announces that the confusion has failed. Angrily, the enemy counterattacks the adventurer, who is hit with great force. The protagonist observes the situation and a green light appears in his hand, indicating something new. The hero comments that for being so big, the opponent is quite slow in its movements. With a focused look, he analyzes every step of the creature before he can act. Next, the creature attacks with a powerful and very fast horizontal strike, but the adventurer is more agile and leaps over the enemy to avoid the impact. He then unleashes a sequence of attacks that hit the goblin chief dead on. The small mascot seems relieved to see his master dominating the fight with ease. He then says it was all predictable, and that the enemy was no match for his companion. However, the green monster seems to be preparing for something as the hero watches it. With a final blow, the guy defeats the large monster, and the system announces his victory. Several windows pop up in front of him, indicating the rewards are being processed. He gets a strength potion and a wooden staff and wonders what they are. The system informs him that the staff gives +3 to magic, and the guide says he's pretty lucky. The protagonist asks what it is, and his partner explains the item is for using magic. The little creature says the item will strengthen his power, and the hero wonders if he'll be able to use magic. The mascot is shocked by his reaction and questions why he's so surprised by the obvious. The young man realizes he can only use magic borrowed from the staff, and that Li Tae Yan doesn't even use hers. The little Bengshin explains that he can learn on his own or from others. It's his choice. The guy reflects and asks if there's any NPC to teach him how to use magic. Bengshin reveals that those NPCs only exist in solo mode and are well hidden. The boy seems disheartened, but the little critter rushes him to go to the 4th floor. He starts to say that he completed the Rakuratis mission, but is interrupted by something. Bengshin looks on as the boy receives level-up rewards and for clearing the 3rd floor. The young man reaches for a glowing blue panel and sees his achievements. He notices a secret reward is missing and wonders if there's still something hidden there. The small floating being then looks very confused by the situation and doesn't understand a thing. Bengshin says the hero cleared the secret room and defeated the boss, so the guy brings up 2 rooms. Turning around, he observes the ancient engravings on the walls and notices the drawings. With that, the guy asks if the mascot knows anything, and Bengshin says he found nothing there. The hero laments that it would take too long to check the floor and decides to pass on the reward. At that moment, he realizes all the drawings on the walls are looking in the same direction. Bengshin then questions where he's going, as it's a dead end. The young man extends his hand and successfully activates the trap removal skill. With that, a secret passage appears, and the guy enters the new room without hesitation. Bengshin is startled and asks how he did that, and the hero explains he got lucky. As the boy moves forward, he wonders what might be hidden there. An ancient monster appears and the system identifies it as the Goblin Lord Hage Hawa. The protagonist finds it strange that a monster has a name and wonders why a lord is here. At this, the small floating being reacts with quite a scare and apprehension. The adventurer then questions if the mascot knows something as the goblin wields its sword. A mysterious voice reveals that the lord is the king of his tribe and goes beyond common concepts. The goblin chief then raises his sword and prepares for what's to come. With a creepy smile, the creature states it won't blame the young challenger, because the guy is a controlled toy, but this enemy is a true monster of this place. The lord then swings his weapon, and a destructive power erupts throughout the room. The explorer braces for the attack as his opponent declares he will end him right there. The young adventurer prepares for the impact of that overwhelming force, looking around. The hero then drops to the ground, and the slide skill is activated by him at just the right moment. The guy gets up, realizing he almost bit the dust if it weren't for that technique of his. Wide-eyed, the explorer is astonished by the unbelievable power of that being. As the ancient creature brandishes its sword, it unleashes a shockwave that destroys everything. With agility, the protagonist dodges the powerful blow using a very quick move. The challenger manages to defend against the attack, but the force of the impact pushes him far back. The Goblin Lord displays unparalleled power, and the warrior is shocked by the evil energy. The Goblin King's sword hits the ground, releasing another explosion of reddish energy. The guy thinks about his current strength of 37, which should be enough for the 50th floor. However, the protagonist tries to fight back but soon realizes he can't handle the opponent. At that moment, the small floating being seems worried and calls out the adventurer's name. While the large monster remains still, the young warrior decides to advance once more. The challenger reasons that the enemy sword is large, and this might give him an advantage. Thinking fast, the protagonist moves quickly towards the lord for an attack. The young hero grips his sword while thinking of an unexpected plan for the fight. However, the imposing creature wields its weapon and reflects on unusual tactics. The adventurer then quickly activates his slide skill once more. The challenger clenches his teeth and prepares a powerful attack against the opponent. He is hit by a strong purple explosion and feels the impact throwing him backward. With that, the guy takes a heavy blow and his movements are slowed for 10 seconds. At the same time, a wave of yellow energy appears around the lord's feet. The young warrior feels trapped and realizes he needs to endure the effect for 10 seconds. Meanwhile, the Goblin King remains imposing, and a timer appears on the screen. The explorer then thinks he can't fight back and desperately seeks a new strategy. The evil creature observes the hero, its red eye glowing intensely. The giant monster attacks with its sword, and now there are only 5 seconds left. The adventurer prepares for the next attack, seeing the energy approaching him. The protagonist once again dodges the blow, which grazes his body. He remains on the ground, lamenting that he lost his footing to dodge that danger. The hero then lies on the floor, his gaze fixed, preparing for what's to come. Suddenly, the creature attacks with its skill, and the protagonist activates Slide. A strong blow hits him squarely, and he suffers 46 damage as the time runs out. The young warrior drags himself across the floor, feeling the heavy impact, and struggles to get up. The Lord watches the fallen hero, and a fairy appears, desperately calling out to Tay-san. The little fairy warns the guy that the enemy is strong, and he should flee to come back later. However, the protagonist, with a sweaty face and a firm expression, decides to finish this fight. The small spirit looks at the hero, surprised, now understanding the reason for his stubbornness. The fairy then explains that the Lord is too strong for someone on the 3rd floor to defeat. She insists that the monster won't flee, and they can return later with more preparation. But the adventurer thinks that if he plays it safe, he won't gain anything special on this floor. The labyrinth system allows you to come and go, but bailing reduces the experience reward. Planning to collect everything from this floor, the hero starts to get up, determined to fight. The irritated fairy calls him arrogant and reckless for challenging such a strong enemy. The explorer declares he doesn't get the concern and affirms that everything has been for this moment. The adventurer then states his purpose, explaining that all his effort was for this. For the protagonist, it wasn't just about surviving but facing challenges that would push him to the limit. The small fairy looks at him dumbfounded, completely surprised by his persistence. He thinks that his actions to collect rewards have also increased his chances. The labyrinth system recognized his fighting spirit and will, boosting his attributes. Because of this, he won't lose his spirit and has gained eyes that can see the enemy's weaknesses. Meanwhile, the young warrior reflects that there is no invincible enemy on the 3rd floor. The combatant then realizes that the Lord has never left his throne since the start of the fight. Suddenly, the small fairy calls the guy's name angrily and he confirms his suspicions. He then thinks that the monster's name is that of the ancient Lord, and it can't leave the throne. The Goblin Chief lets out a laugh and says he respects the fighter's tenacity, promising to fight. The Great Lord then curiously asks what method the combatant will use this time. The young adventurer activates a new skill, and the system confirms the use of his apnea. With that, the warrior charges forward with a fist ready to attack, boosted by the technique. The protagonist's powerful blow hits something with force, causing it to shatter. The hero's punch didn't hit the Lord, but the base of his throne, which began to crack. The dungeon boss is surprised as his stone seat breaks apart. But even while falling, the creature doesn't give up and attempts one last attack with its sword. The Lord warns that the idea was good, but destroying the place would also hurt the young man and the fairy. Ignoring the danger, the protagonist points his hand at the monster and activates a skill. The system then activates confusion, and the creature becomes completely disoriented by it. At that moment, the fighter prepares for the final blow, concentrating fire in his fist. Shortly after, arrows of fire rain down from the ceiling, and the Lord questions if this was the grand plan. Suddenly, the system announces that the process has failed, and the young man's eye glows red. The creature defends itself with its sword and shouts that fire attacks wouldn't hurt it. With that, the monster spins its blade in a circular motion and deflects all the arrows. But the hero's confusion skill hits the Lord's chest, leaving him dazed. The dungeon boss is shocked to see the warrior dodge the debris and wonders how. It turns out the adventurer hid behind a piece of the throne to protect himself. The protagonist then explains that nothing can hinder him because he didn't use a special skill. The protagonist, Tay-san, positions himself with his bow, ready to attack the large enemy. With that, a hand extends towards a mysterious chair that was in the area. This hand touches a magic circle that glows intensely with a strong energy. In that instant, the young man and the monster charge at each other for the final confrontation. The enemy lets out a laugh and comments disdainfully on the guy's skills. The monster shows a confident smile and a very cunning look towards its opponent. The hero, in turn, reveals a serious and determined look for the fight. Meanwhile, a ghostly being floats in the air, just observing the entire combat. Before, the young man only won by using his strength and his unusually high stats for his level. For the first time, the ghost sees the guy facing a really strong enemy. The monster then dodges a swift blow from our hero with great agility. Our hero moves quickly and manages to evade a powerful attack from the enemy. The protagonist maintains a focused gaze, and his blade shines with a very bright light. At this, the ghost retreats, startled, after a large explosion occurs in the battle. Finally, the monster is thrown far away, landing among the debris on the room's floor. Laughing, the monster provokes the fighter with its energy, and the villain says a long-range hit won't be fatal. The hero blocks the blow with an energy blast, warning that he won't let the adversary get closer. In a close-up, his eye glows purple as his powers are ramping up for the big fight ahead. Beside him, the little ghost is scared by the scene, and the tiny creature asks what he's trying to do. The warrior advances with his blade, unleashing a red slash and lunging at the monster with everything he's got. The swordsman's powerful energy wave hits the being, pushing it back with a strong impact. Even while attacking, the hero feels a sharp pain, and a warning appears, showing he has taken a lot of damage. The warrior then activates a defensive skill and a purple aura envelops his body, activating his resistance. The monster is surprised by the scene, seeing its opponent absorb its blow, and is shocked by what happened. A screen near the young man explains the resistance, which nullifies attacks that could instantly take him out. The young man reflects on the new technique, understanding that he's invincible for 1 second with his power. Taking advantage of the invincibility, the hero attacks the enemy on the ground, using his chance to counter. The monster then screams, feeling the guy's attack as energy bursts pierce the villain's body. The fighter approaches the enemy with a fierce look, biting down on something, ready for another blow. Finally, the protagonist grabs the monster's face and transfers a huge amount of energy into the adversary's body. The young hero holds the enemy's face as immense energy flows into the villain's body. He grips his weapon tightly, his face showing the great effort he's putting into the attack. A huge red energy slash rushes towards the being lying on the ground. The warrior attacks the fallen enemy, piercing its chest with a blade of energy. The monster's face shows the impact of the blow, with pieces flying everywhere. His face is sweaty, but the guy maintains his strength to finish the fight once and for all. Even in pain, the enemy smiles and thinks that this is a truly incredible fighter. And so, the champion wins the fight against the ancient Goblin Lord, who is now completely defeated. With that, the protagonist seems relieved, thinking that the long battle is finally over. He notes that he gained new skills due to the opponent's difficulty and leveled up twice. The young man then sees 2 glowing blue screens in front of him, and his little companion is startled. The screens indicate spiritual growth, and the strong attack skill surprises the guy. This skill increases damage based on mana, and he didn't expect to get something like this so soon. Another screen appears with the acceleration skill, which he barely managed to obtain in his past life. He holds a green potion that increases power and thinks about saving it for later. The guy sees a special necklace that grants power, and his friend asks why he's so quiet, but the young man says it's nothing. A screen then displays his stats, and the level 12 youth thinks about how quickly his power is growing. The warrior then clenches his fist, smiling as he feels stronger and realizes he made the right choice. The hero looks down and asks his companion something, who seems confused by the question. The little spirit floats irritably with a pouting face, not wanting the young man to say anything. The little ghost hurries the protagonist to go down, but the guy asks to finish the mission first. Descending the stone staircase, they continue their way to the next floor of the dungeon. Reaching the end of the stairs, the protagonist sees a wooden door that indicates the next challenge. At that moment, they see a skull-shaped structure glowing red with intense energy. The young man looks at his scared friend and wonders why he's so terrified by the scene. Suddenly, a screen says he passed the Rakuratis' test, and that the creature wants to reward him. The hero thinks that Rakuratis knew about the Lord on the 3rd floor and still tested him there. He refuses the reward, saying he's already decided, but his companion is startled by the entity's offer. But the entity's interference area shrinks, and the young man receives a protective coat as a prize. The protagonist is surprised to see he's gained the passive skill Enhanced Protective Coat. He observes his new skill and realizes his stamina doesn't decrease when he takes any damage. With this, he wonders if this skill can be activated somehow to defend himself. At that moment, a red energy from the creature appears, indicating it awaits a future encounter. As soon as the mist vanishes, the young man says he felt no fear, not even when he was close to his end. The adventurer asks the little ghost why he hides so much, but he says the hero will change his mind. Then a new screen appears announcing that the 4th floor mission has begun, where he must defeat the boss. Going further down, the hero remembers that the 4th floor is home to orcs, as his friend had said before. The little ghost notes that orcs have strong bodies and some intelligence, wondering what awaits them. Cautiously, the explorer opens the door a crack to peek at what's on the other side in the new area. Upon entering, the guy finds a grand altar, and a message appears, revealing it to be the altar of Balthazar. The companion explains that the altar was made by a worshipper and connects the gods, transmitting their influence. The protagonist questions about Balthazar, the god of victory, but according to his friend, he's just a common god. The altar glows and shows that Balthazar wishes to test him, offering a reward if the young man wins. Balthazar shows satisfaction with the adventurer's decision and begins to read his entire life experience. The young man is surprised by the memory reading but understands that the god will evaluate his worth this way. The divine entity's altar offers an even tougher test to the adventurer, who is surprised by the challenge. The young man asks if he'll have another challenge since he had trouble with Rakuratis, but his friend says Balthazar likes him. The companion assures the hero he can win with his skills and says that gods don't break deals, but Rakuratis is weird. Thoughtfully, the little ghost reflects on the situation and cautiously awaits the explorer's decision. With determination, the protagonist accepts the mission, and the divine entity shows satisfaction with the young man's choice. Balthazar's area of influence decreases, and he has received support from the floors 20 in favor and 1 against. A message reveals that the 4th floor is changing, and the adventurer's look shows his surprise. Suddenly, the environment begins to fall apart around him, and the explorer feels a great impact. The hero looks up, seeing the structures modifying themselves, and wonders what is happening there. The floor shatters into pieces, and the labyrinth transforms into several floating islands in the air. The little ghost asks if it's all over, but the protagonist replies that he's never seen anything like this before. The adventurer leaps between the floating platforms, showing agility and adapting to the new terrain. Opening the door, the young man is surprised by what he sees in the new area revealed by the divine test. The protagonist's face shows pure disbelief at the complete transformation of the environment. The entire labyrinth has turned into a straight line, and the protagonist notices the huge change in the path ahead of him.